Hello, everyone, and welcome to our first Mental Health for Parkinson's conference. I'm Katrina Call, the Executive Director of the Brian Grant Foundation. As you may know, the Brian Grant Foundation provides tools to improve the well-being of people with Parkinson's. Our programs focus on exercise, nutrition, and mental health to help people live better with the disease. The goal of today's conference is to help you walk away with some tools that you can include in your daily lives to improve your mood. Depression, anxiety, apathy, and other mental health challenges are common symptoms of Parkinson's. Combined with the loneliness and isolation that have occurred over the past year due to the pandemic, we know that many people are experiencing mental health problems, and we hope that you'll leave today with some ways to improve your mood. I also encourage you to visit us online at briangrant.org to see what other online events we have coming up and to check out our videos, blog articles, and other resources to help you live better with Parkinson's. Today's event is being emceed by our program manager, Iris Ringer. If you have attended any of our webcasts over the past year, you know Iris very well, and so we're very delighted to have Iris with us today. We also have a video here from our founder, Brian Grant, also welcoming you to today's conference. So again, thanks for being here. I really appreciate everyone's participation, and I'm very much looking forward to the day that we can see each other again. Thank you.
Hello, I'm Brian Grant, and I want to thank you for joining our first Mental Health for Parkinson's conference. Through personal experience, I can tell you that anxiety, depression, and apathy are some of the hardest symptoms to deal with Parkinson's. So I want to thank you for coming out, and we hope you learned something here today.
Good morning, everyone. Welcome to our first virtual mental health conference. Thank you, Katrina, and thank you, Brian, for those lovely greetings and welcomes. I hope everyone is getting settled. We're here, Brian Grant Foundation is here in Portland, Oregon, so it's about 8:30 in the morning for us. So we're all just kind of waking up, getting some coffee, and I hope that you all are getting comfortable and getting settled for today's program. We have an exciting day, a day for you, a day for your care partners, a day for your family, a day to feel good. It's been a rough year, as we all know. We've been stuck at home, stuck on our computers. So being able to connect, even if it's just this way, I think we will all feel better at the end of the day. And the spring, it's springtime, it's summertime, so things are starting to look up. Today's program is brought to you by Amneal and AbbVie and Moda Health. So thank you for their sponsorship and partnership. Again, today is a day for you. It's a day to take some tools and tips to add to your toolkit to feel better. Like I said, it's a tough time right now. And I think our presenters will definitely give you and your family and your care partner something that you'll be able to use. So I am Iris Ringer, as Katrina said. I'm the program manager here at Brian Grant Foundation. And the foundation is located in Portland, Oregon, like I said. And Brian Grant was a NBA legend. He still is. He retired at 32, and then at 36, he was diagnosed with Parkinson's. He played for the Portland Trail Blazers for a couple seasons, and he calls Portland home. So he founded the foundation here about 10 years ago. We really focus on exercise, nutrition, and we're developing and bringing forward our mental health component as well. So Brian is, he's beloved here in Portland. He's also beloved in all of the cities that he played in. And he's honest too about his mental health challenges. And so I think that's just something that you can all relate to him with. He has Parkinson's, and yes, he played in the NBA, but he's also a very genuine and compassionate man. So I'm looking at some notes here. So let's see. Like everyone, we had to change our programming and our events in 2021 with the pandemic. So we've just moved everything virtually. Everything is online for the Brian Grant Foundation. So if you go to briangrant.org, you'll be able to see our schedule of events and the things that we have happening. Today is our first virtual conference online. We also have another one scheduled in June for exercise professionals and rehabilitation specialists. So if you're interested in that, do check out our website. That event is June 12th. We have monthly expert Q&As the second Tuesday of every month. We've had a great lineup, and those recordings are located on our website, so you can go back and check those out. This month in May, today's May 1st, so happy May Day. May 11th, we have Working with Parkinson's. So if you have Parkinson's and you're navigating the professional world of employment, this expert Q&A is for you. We're partnering with the Shirley Lab Rehabilitation Center in Chicago at Northwestern University, and they will give us some tips and tools on how to navigate employment with Parkinson's. So May 11th, and those events are all free on our website. And we're very excited to announce on May 12th our Shake It Till You Make It Gala. And that is at 6 p.m. Pacific time. It's a free gala auction online, and it's just an hour. So we hope that people will be able to attend. It's going to include Brian and friends. As you may or may not know, Brian Grant just released a new book called Rebound, and it's about his life before, during, and after the NBA. So definitely talking about stories of growing up in Ohio, awesome stories about the NBA, and then, of course, being diagnosed with Parkinson's and his journey now. So that night on May 12th, we're going to highlight the book, highlight his friends, highlight his journey. Hopefully you all can attend. Again, check out briangrant.org for a whole list of events and resources. We have nutrition, exercise videos, recipes on our website. So do check those out. June 8th for our expert Q&A, we have how to stay consistent with exercise. So we all know that your mental health is important, but so is your nutrition and exercise. So Nate Coomer, who's out of Seattle, the Parkinson's Fitness Project, he will be doing that expert Q&A. So hopefully giving us all a little bump of energy and motivation to keep going and keep moving our bodies. Today's lineup, we have Susanna Eller. She is coming to us from Seattle, Washington. And I think if she's on the video now, she can join me. And then there you are. Hi, Susanna.
Good morning.
So Susanna's going to start and give us a mental health and Parkinson's overview. And then after Susanna, we have Barcha Wachel, and he's going to be talking about mindfulness. And then grab a chair, everybody, because at 11 o'clock, we have yoga with Peter Litch. And it just so happens that all of our presenters are actually from Seattle. So we should have just moved this event from Portland to Seattle. But and then I also want to just remind everyone there is the chat function. So Katrina Call, our executive director, is helping to manage that right now. So she's on, and do put your questions in the chat function. So Susanna is going to give a very excellent detailed presentation. And then when she concludes, we will have a Q&A. So we'll be able to get your questions through the chat, and then myself and Susanna will work through those questions. Let's see, any other housekeeping? Again, I just want to thank everybody for being here today. I think it's so important to take time for yourself. And I know that you'll walk away with, I know you'll walk away feeling better. So let's see. I know we're a little early, but I think that's might be okay. Susanna, she is she's a counselor and a psychotherapist, and the company name is Brain and Balance Counseling. And maybe you could just tell us a little bit more about your business, and are you taking new patients?
Well, thank you so much, Iris, and thank you to Katrina and Brian and the whole group for including me today. Like Iris said, my name is Susanna Eller, and I am a licensed mental health counselor here in Seattle. And I've spent the better part of a decade working in the field of neurology. counseling patients with all types of neurological disorders, but specifically those with Parkinson's disease. I became active in the Parkinson's community initially because I have 3 family members who've had Parkinson's, so it's a cause near and dear to my heart. And I lead several support groups for folks with Parkinson's disease and for people caring for those with Parkinson's disease. And I've been an active volunteer in the local Parkinson's community as well. So I'm all in. I'm here with my professional work, my personal life, and my volunteer work, really dedicated to the Parkinson's community and love the community. I'm speaking today on this topic because mental health issues in particular can be quite debilitating for Parkinson's patients, especially if they're not identified or treated. And mental health symptoms really worsen your quality of life. They contribute to your physical and cognitive deterioration and increase the distress that your family or your caregivers experience too. This past year, as we know, has been universally a further blow to mental health and quality of life in all humans, but especially those with Parkinson's disease. The prolonged COVID pandemic restrictions have really impacted day-to-day activities for many people. And those things that are essential to good mental health, like regular exercise and socialization, all of those things have been impacted really heavily. So now more than ever, it's crucial to be proactive in speaking up and addressing the issues and finding support when mental health challenges come up. So next slide. So I've shared this slide before if you've heard me speak, but I really like to start here because it's such a great visual for Parkinson's disease and how what people with Parkinson's disease present to the world is just a small sliver of what they're coping with. It's no surprise that many people with Parkinson's disease face mental health challenges when they have so much going on under the surface. With Parkinson's disease, each individual is unique and has unique needs over time. I like to say that this is a designer disease, custom made for each of you, which makes it especially challenging for the medical community to treat and support. Of course, you can sit in a room with other folks with Parkinson's disease and you will have commonality, but what medication works for you may not work for them. What exercise seems to help someone else with Parkinson's may not be the best fit for you. And above all else, I always tell people, you know your brain and body better than we ever can. So you're a key part of the team for your care. Also, in addition to you, a person with Parkinson's disease, your family, your care partners, your support system can all be impacted. And I feel like they are just as important parts of your healthcare team. I love to hear from partners, spouses, kids of patients, because it helps me see the bigger picture. We only get this small window into how you're doing when we see you in clinic, and those who are closest to you get that full bigger picture. We know that the psychosocial impact is not often well addressed in Parkinson's disease, and that's why I like this graphic. It speaks to the fact that so much of what impacts your quality of life is under the surface, it's less visible, and it may not be seen by your medical team at all, but it really plays a part in your day-to-day life and your quality of life. I think about a trip to the emergency room. Let's say you have a fall or you have an infection and you end up in the ER. That's a great example of this. For a person with Parkinson's disease, you might have to explain things to the medical professionals in the ER about what you're experiencing. They might only know what's above the surface. They might only know tremor or only know what they've seen on TV about Parkinson's. And that's extremely frustrating, but it speaks to why it's so important for our Parkinson's community to be connected to such great groups like Brian Grant, we need you to be educated medical consumers so that you can advocate for your own needs. In the same way that we want you to see a movement disorder neurologist rather than a general neurologist, because the field of neurology is so large and they're really the experts, we can't expect the doctors and nurses in the ER to really know Parkinson's disease because they're expected to be generalists and know a little bit about everything. But they don't even get to scratch the surface with Parkinson's disease. They only see what's obvious above the wave. Mental health, then, is especially tricky because it can hide below the surface in anyone, but especially in Parkinson's disease. I think it's easy in a short doctor's appointment for some things to get overlooked or forgotten. And there's also this dangerous thing about patients. Patients are people, and people tend to want to be good and liked. And that makes people in the doctor's office want to be good patients. But that kind of leads to complaints not being shared as much, and then in turn, less support gets offered. If you get nothing else from my talk today, I want you to get this nugget. Speak up. If you are struggling with any of the things I talk about today, please don't hesitate to bring it up with your loved ones or with your medical team and see what support they can offer. In a clinic visit, we only get this tiny sliver of the picture of your life. And when you and your loved ones share more with us, we can really fill in that picture with all of the color and variety and depth that allows us to better support you and better problem solve with you to create the quality of life that hopefully you're striving for. Next slide. So, physicians often focus on the physical aspects of the disease progression. They might have you walk up and down the hall, they might have you do some tests with your fingers or your hands, but that can leave the under the surface portions of the disease unaddressed sometimes. And many patients don't realize how much of their non-motor symptoms can be attributed to Parkinson's, and then they don't bring it up with their neurologist. Again, wanting to be those good patients, everything's good, no complaints. But when we look at this graphic, I've put some symptoms in the white boxes and how they might impact a person with Parkinson's disease in that teal circle. You can see, though, that we could move any symptom to almost any of those impact areas and it would still fit. It is all so interwoven, and really every area of Parkinson's can impact a person psychosocially. And psychosocially to me is kind of the catchphrase for quality of life. You know, if we look at that top corner, urinary changes, constipation, sexual dysfunction, loss of autonomy, those things could really impact your mood. But I could turn that circle and we could say, well, yeah, but they're also impacting behavior. And they're also impacting physical abilities. And they're also impacting your cognition. And then if we look over at neuropsychiatric changes, or pain, or communication changes, or relationship changes, again, that might impact your behaviors, but it also impacts your mood, your physicality, and your cognition. The typical cognitive symptoms that we might think of for Parkinson's, trouble focusing, or challenges with multitasking, having sleep changes, being forgetful, those also are going to impact your behavior, your mood, and your physicality. And then those typical physical symptoms we think of, the slowness of movement, the stiffness, the freezing up where you cannot take that next step, or the changes in your balance or your tremor, those are the physical challenges, but they also impact your mood. They also impact your behavior, and they can impact your cognition. So I really don't like it if someone says, well, that's a mood thing or that's a cognition thing, because it's all going to impact one another. We can't just say, oh, we got to put that in a column of that's for that provider or that's for that type of physician. All of this, in my opinion, should be brought up with your neurologist because it's all impacting your quality of life. Next slide. I have this slide here because I think it is important for people to know how easily mood and memory changes can look like one another and impact one another. Depression in Parkinson's disease might look like poor sleep or that loss of motivation or apathy, just can't get off the couch, feelings of worthlessness or fatigue or that poor concentration and cognition. Sometimes it's a lower appetite or really slow movements. And sometimes it's difficult to tease out if the symptoms are due to the neurological changes caused by Parkinson's or if they're due to the depression itself. We talk about kind of a chicken or the egg. Are you depressed because you have less dopamine and you have less serotonin because of the disease? Or are you depressed because you were given a diagnosis that is very challenging and progressive? Are you sad because you chemically are sad? Or are you sad because you have Parkinson's and it's hard? And sometimes it's both. But I have seen patients who are severely depressed appear to have dementia and be treated by their doctors and family as if they have dementia. But it's because they are so depressed that they can't focus on the details to recall them, or they aren't sleeping enough, or they're sleeping too much, and that can cause what appears to be a cognitive impairment. And once the depression is addressed and treated, they often are very capable cognitively, with the apparent dementia completely resolving. Of course, that's wonderful. We love to see that. But it leaves me really sad when it can go untreated for long periods of time and then it can be missed. But conversely, a very confused person could appear withdrawn and depressed, which could be occurring. They could be also depressed, but the withdrawal could be about fear or confusion about what is happening around them and less about a chemically based mood change. And this can be really worrisome if bills aren't getting paid on time or medications are being missed or not taken properly. If the people around the person are not aware that memory is impacted and they think that the withdrawal they are seeing is mood, there could be some really dangerous, consequences for that person or that family. So again, we have to speak up. I want you to speak up if you or someone you love are showing any of these signs or symptoms. Do not let it go ignored. Please, for your loved one and for your own sake, share with the doctors what's happening. Next slide. So, as you can see in all of this, because I bring it up so many times, one of the biggest challenges is figuring out what is causing what. Look at these lists. They are so similar. So many of the challenges of Parkinson's disease look similar to the adverse side effects that can come from the medications for Parkinson's disease. And medications for other things for that matter, since unfortunately getting Parkinson's disease doesn't mean that you won't get other things. It doesn't make you immune from other ailments or simply aging. So look at this. We've got adverse side effects from Parkinson's medications of nausea, involuntary movements or dyskinesias, worsening constipation, low blood pressure, confusion, hallucinations, impulse control issues like compulsive gambling or shopping or pornography use, anxiety, fall risk, sleep problems. And then we look at some of the adverse impacts or symptoms of the actual disease of Parkinson's, and you might see low mood or sleep problems or constipation or urinary challenges, slower movement, more fall, sexual dysfunction, hallucination, confusion, or blood pressure changes. Not only can the mental health symptoms be part of the changes in your brain and body due to the disease, but also the medications for the disease and for other illnesses could be causing some of the symptoms or challenges you experience. It's important to be aware that sometimes a person with Parkinson's disease can have mental health symptoms that are associated also with their under-medicated time. So if you are feeling off, and that is when anxiety is high, or that is when depression is high, then it becomes really important to look at if the symptom of being off of medication is causing the mental health. So then you want to work closely with your doctor and adjust your medication regimen to reduce those motor fluctuations, because that might improve mood. Again, it only works if you speak up. So you have to share what is challenging with your loved ones, with your care partners, with your medical team, so that together you can strategize to see how we can make improvement. None of these things are things that we have to just live with. They are all things that we can find improvements for, but only if you share them. Next slide. So, two of my favorite characters in children's literature here, giving us a good example of depression and anxiety. But again, just like on that last slide, there are so many things here that look similar on both lists. Depression and anxiety can have similar symptoms and can feed off of each other, sometimes making it difficult to know what is impacting you or your loved one. With depression, that kind of Eeyore low feeling, we can see feelings of sadness, cheerfulness, more irritable, less interest, more apathy, more tired, GI problems or less appetite, more agitation, slower thinking, trouble thinking or concentrating, some unexplained physical problems, sometimes pain or headache, and sleep changes. And then with anxiety, kind of that piglet feeling, the nervousness, you get that sometimes sense of impending doom or difficulty controlling the worries. You can get more restless. You might avoid doing things because of fear or anxiety. You might feel more weak or tired or have more GI problems, feeling nervous or tense, having trouble concentrating, having trouble sleeping. Sometimes we see excessive sweating or trembling or unexplained or worsening physical problems. If you're feeling more like Eeyore, that feeling down, less energy or motivation, being more tearful or feeling more helpless or hopeless, then it's worth exploring if it might be depression. Whereas if you're feeling more like Piglet, if you're feeling more nervous, or you're finding you're having these reoccurring thoughts, worries, or fears, sometimes people feel like they're losing control. We even do see patients describe panic attacks with sudden, severe physical and emotional distress. Sometimes breathing changes. The person might feel short of breath. You might feel your heart is racing, feeling like you're having palpitations. You might feel really hot or start sweating. Anxiety might be constant, which would be more of what we would consider a generalized anxiety disorder, or it could be situational, such as going out in public or going out in crowded places, making you feel like you are a little bit more social phobia. Again, we want to remember that these symptoms, especially anxiety, can be amplified when you're in that off period, when your meds are not effective for you or when your meds are wearing off. So you always want to work with your doctor to optimize your on periods, especially if you're experiencing worsening anxiety or depression when you're off your meds. There are lots of options to help with both of these challenges, both depression and anxiety. There's lots of medications that can be very effective. And please don't be scared to try a medication if your physician suggests it. The medications for depression and anxiety have been around a long time. We know them very well, and they are largely very safe and effective. Counseling can also be helpful. I'm a little biased there since that's my role. But also just getting engaged socially can help. Support groups are great for this, or Parkinson's disease groups, or gym exercise groups. The best way to combat many of these challenges is to find purpose in your day, to get busy with work or volunteerism, something that's important or meaningful to you, or community activism. I do like to say that at first you might have to fake it till you make it. Sometimes you have to force yourself to do the things you know will make you feel better until they actually start to make you feel better. It can be helpful in those cases to make a schedule or a routine and stick to it, or give a loved one permission to remind you to attend that yoga class, or give that loved one permission to sign up with you to go to the gym or to volunteer at the animal shelter. But making it a routine, setting it on the calendar like it's a doctor's appointment so that you give it that same gravity and importance in your life can make a difference, especially when you're struggling with motivation. But once you make one enjoyable connection with someone at the exercise class or at the support group or at the place where you volunteer or work, it will automatically help you with motivation because you have someone or something to look forward to seeing when you go. And it sometimes helps you stay accountable if there's someone at that class or that group or that event expecting to see you and calling you if you don't show up and saying, "Hey, I missed you today." So that can really help. Next slide. So, like many aspects of Parkinson's disease, mood and memory can have significant impacts on the entire family. When you are depressed or anxious, it can inhibit your ability to engage in or enjoy things you once did. And this can be heartbreaking and frustrating for your loved ones. Or if things are changing cognitively, it can be very scary for your loved ones if they aren't sure how things will continue to progress or how they will support you in the future. How much you share with those close to you and how much you want to involve others in your life with Parkinson's disease can vary, especially early in the diagnosis. That day-to-day life may not change overnight, but letting those around you in on how things are changing can keep you all on the same page and help keep everyone in a positive and proactive space. Think about how you would want to be told if something was changing for your loved one, and what would be important for you to know. Remembering that being part of a relationship is that there's give and take, and sharing your experiences can help your loved ones know when to give and when to step back and give you space. A great place to try to come back to when things feel overwhelming is to focus on quality of life. looking at the whole person, not just the Parkinson's disease, always striving to have respect be at the forefront and use open, sensitive communication. If needed, reach out to a counselor for support. Again, you have to speak up to get help. But remember that counseling can not only be helpful for the person with Parkinson's disease, but also for the spouse, the care partners, you as a couple, or your whole family. Next slide. So I know it can be overwhelming to hear all of these possible things that can be challenging with Parkinson's disease. But again, I want to remind you, this is a designer disease, custom made for you. So not every part of what we are discussing is part of your journey. So trying to shift us into the positive, which is where we will hopefully stay the rest of the day, I want to spend the rest of my time talking about hopeful and positive things, that there's so much you can do to combat these challenges. One is to take control, not let Parkinson's disease steer the ship. And you do this by engaging in life, engaging in exercise, using the tools you will explore today, like mindfulness and relaxation. Excuse me. Making sure there's purpose in your day. It could be tending to a plant or an animal, or volunteering, working in the community, or a professional role that you still have. Or it can be being the best partner you can to someone you love. Then set up a daily routine that builds something in it that you will know to make a difference in your mental health. Move your body as much as you can. Connect to someone outside of your house, especially during a global pandemic. Connect to people outside of your house. Fill your body with nourishment, both the food sustenance kind and the love sustenance kind. And get some fresh air. Sit or move your body outside. Get some sunshine when you can. Those of us in the Pacific Northwest really appreciate the sunshine that starts coming out this time of year. Trying to breathe some fresh air. Find the ways to schedule your day so that you have these things in it, so that it feels like a commitment to yourself, your family, to your community, that you're going to do these things. Next slide. So I want to give you some tools. Last time I spoke, I shared some of these tools that can be helpful to settle your brain. And I know you will get many more today from Barcha and Peter. But I want to give you two of my favorites in case you haven't heard them before. One is 478 breathing, and one is the 5 senses naming. So we're going to take a few minutes together now. We're going to really learn these and try them to see how they feel. So the 478 breath, right there in the title, 478 breath, is the instruction. This exercise is very simple. It takes almost no time, and it doesn't require any equipment. You can do this anywhere, which is why I love it. You can do it in any position, but when you're learning it, maybe sit up so that you can pay attention to how your body feels. So we're going to start with a breath in, and that's the 4 of the 478 breath. So we would breathe in through our nose for 4 counts in our head. Then the 7 is where we hold our breath for a count of 7. Then the 8 is where we exhale completely through our mouth, even giving it a little bit of sound if you want that kind of sound. And that is 1 breath. So the 4 in through the nose, the 7 holding the breath, and the 8 out through the mouth. So we're going to do it together, and I'll guide you. It is not important how fast or slow you count. What is important is that ratio, that 4, 7, 8 doubles the time we spend breathing out over the time we're breathing in. And the counts and the switching from nose to holding breath to breathing out through the mouth gets you out of your head. It's really hard to be thinking anxious, busy thoughts if we're doing this breath correctly. So let's try it, and then we'll talk about it a little bit more and try it one more time. So I'm going to guide you. We're going to breathe in through the nose. Hold your breath. Out through the mouth. That's one breath. So let's try it again. In through the nose. Hold it. Out through the mouth. One breath. So what I usually say is a relaxation breath, a mindfulness tool, anything we're trying to do to settle our brains down, to settle our bodies down. It's exercise. It's something you're not used to doing. Our society isn't good at saying, "Oh, good job relaxing today. You did such a good job relaxing today." So we don't usually put a lot of effort or worth on the things that are relaxing. So I like to think about it as if you were taking a new physical challenge on. If you wanted to do a 10K, but you had never had walked a long ways or jogged at all, you would have to practice. You would have to teach your body and your brain what it feels like to do that physical effort. And it is the exact same thing when we're learning a relaxation tool. We have to teach our brain and body what it feels like. So I usually say when you're laying down for bed at night, or when you're getting ready for bed and in a more relaxed, quiet place, maybe the lights are dim in your room, or maybe you're getting cozy with a nice blanket, do the breath. Maybe do it 3 or 4 times. It might take you 2 minutes. And then when you wake up in the morning and you're still kind of in that fuzzy, relaxed place, do it again 3 or 4 times, maybe 2 minutes. So 4 minutes a day. Most people can give me 4 minutes a day. And then what happens is if you've practiced it those 2 times a day for a couple of minutes, within a week, your brain and body have learned it. And they've associated it with that relaxed in bed or getting ready for bed place. Then, any time of day, when things are stressful or you're feeling your brain and body start to bubble up with anxiety or you're feeling a little down, you can do this breath and your brain and body will respond with, "Oh, I know this. This is our relaxation breath." And right away you'll start to settle down. But you have to practice. You have to practice in the relaxed place so that your brain knows what you're doing when you try to pull it out in that more stressful place. So let's do it again. It's 4, 7, and 8. We're going to breathe in through the nose. Here we go. Hold it. Out through the mouth. There we go. One breath. So that is exercise number 1, your 4, 7, 8 breath. Over time, as you learn it, you'll be able to slow it down and really give your attention to it. And it will start to feel better and better. Remembering it's not important how much time you spend on it, it's the ratio and just giving it a little bit of practice. It's a natural tranquilizer for your nervous system. Unlike drugs, medication, There's no bad side effects to doing some breathing, doing some relaxation. And if you do it twice a day, you will learn it pretty quickly. But you cannot do it too frequently. If you want, you can learn over time to extend it, to do slower breaths, to do more breaths at a time, but don't ever do more than 3 or 4 breaths when you're first practicing. That's why I said, 3 or 4 breaths at bedtime, 3 or 4 breaths in the morning. So the last exercise I want to give you is 5 senses naming. Now this one I like because it's great for, let's say you're sitting in the doctor's office waiting for the doctor to come in for your appointment, and your brain starts getting busy and you're thinking, what are they going to say today? Are they going to tell me something has changed? Are they going to add another medication? Your brain starts to get busy with the what ifs. Then, instead of letting your brain focus on the what ifs, we want to get it busy with some mindfulness, with some grounding. And so we start with 5 senses. The easiest one is sight. So we usually start with sight. You just start naming to yourself everything you see in the room. So maybe you're in the waiting room at the doctor's office and you say, I see the magazine rack. I see the brown table. I see the blue chairs. I see the multicolored carpet. I see the fluorescent lights. I see the woman behind the desk. I see the check-in paperwork. And you just start naming everything you see. And if you get really detailed, you can go for a pretty long time naming everything you see. I see the brown frame around the green mat with the picture of people at the beach. And you just start naming things with detail. And if you run out of things you see, you go to your next sense. The next easiest one is things you hear. So it might be, I hear the rustling of the magazine by the other person in the waiting room. I hear the hum of the fluorescent lights. I hear the fan whirring. I hear the phone ringing. I hear the door closing down the hall. I hear the little kids giggling with their mom. I hear my partner breathing heavily next to me. It can be anything at all. And you go through what you hear. When you run out of things you hear, then you can name things you feel. I feel my glasses on the bridge of my nose. I feel my clothing on my skin. I feel the chair under my bottom. I feel the floor under my feet. I feel the watch on my wrist. Going through all the things you feel. And then you can go to things you smell. Now with Parkinson's, you might not smell as much, but maybe you smell a little bit. Maybe you can smell the coffee in your hand, or maybe you can smell the shampoo you used that morning, or your partner's deodorant or cologne. And then if you run out of things you smell, you can go to things you taste. And usually then you can only come up with one thing. Maybe it's the last thing you ate or drank, or maybe there's a peppermint in your mouth and you can taste that. But if you go through your 5 senses and you really slow it down and pay attention to the things you're naming, it gets you out of your thoughts, gets you out of your brain, and it grounds you in your body and space. It connects you back to the here and now so that you can be more present for what you're trying to attend to, whether it's the doctor's visit or anywhere. You can do this exercise on your couch at home if you're feeling your anxiety building or you're feeling like you're worried about what the day might bring. And at home, well, the average person's house has a lot of stuff in it. So we can name things we see for a long time. If you can allow yourself to just kind of get lost in this exercise, it can really help settle things down. So again, the 2 things that you can try that I'll send with you today are the 4-7-8 breath and the 5 senses naming. And those 2 tools are going to give you something you can take with you anywhere and use to your advantage. Use them to settle your brain down without anybody knowing what you're doing. You can do them, especially the five senses naming, you can do without anyone knowing you're doing it, as you're just naming things in your head without really giving any attention to the things that are stressful. Next slide. So this is me. I am a psychotherapist in Seattle. And as Iris kind of alluded to, I am very full. All mental health practices, unfortunately, because of the pandemic, are very full. It is difficult to find enough support right now, but that doesn't mean that you shouldn't speak up. Please, 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 again, I'm going to say it, please speak up if any of these things that I've mentioned today or any other things have been challenging for you. If you can share with the people who love you or with your medical team what is challenging, then it really allows us to offer ideas or support or just, be present with you in it, if nothing else, so that you're not suffering alone. So thank you all so much, and I look forward to hearing any questions or things that have come up today during my talk.
Thank you, Susanna. We had you speak, I think, in January for our expert Q&A, and the information is always great to hear again. So I really appreciate you taking the time today to share with us all that valuable information.
Well, like all of these things, we have to say it a few times and hear it a few times before it can really sink in. So I'm really thankful for the opportunity to share again and to hopefully give a few more nuggets of ideas of how we can connect.
Yeah, and I think what you said about it was making me think about car maintenance. It is something that you have to practice. I am so guilty of that. Just busy, 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 and there isn't that participation ribbon for good job relaxing today. And I think that that's really important to remember. And then I think
Yeah,
also
our
maybe
society.
go ahead.
I was just saying, our society really praises overwork and overextending yourself. And so I hope that we can change that. I hope that we can get to a place where we are supporting each other around, you did a good job today taking care of yourself and relaxing. And I think the pandemic actually helped us shift a little bit in that direction.
Right. And then on the flip side, we don't want the pandemic to do that too much. We really want to start kind of getting out of that. If you're in a deep hole, to start getting out of that.
Getting back engaged, getting some purpose in your day, those are so crucial right now.
I think that is the biggest thing that we've heard is the lack of connection. And so, again, that's why we're here today. So hopefully people are connecting virtually. So the relaxation, I think, is a really great, or the breathing is a really great tip and tool, and to continue to practice that for people to take away with that. And of course, the five senses, I think slowing yourself down, really thinking about what you're feeling, seeing, smelling. I really think that those two things are really tangible and people can and take those away with them today. So love all of that. Thank you for that.
Yeah, I hope that it's helpful. And of course, there's lots of other tools out there. Don't want to inundate everybody, but I want you to have a couple nuggets that you can practice and give some attention to. I will never be offended if something I suggested isn't the right fit for you because everyone is different, but please use it if it's helpful.
I remember before you also spoke of finding a purpose, and maybe you could elaborate on that as well.
Yeah, I think that having something outside of yourself that is meaningful, that you give attention and time to, is really helpful in keeping mood up and keeping anxiety down. Like I said, it could be taking care of the garden or some house plants that you tend to and water and pick, the dead blossoms off of. If you have a cat or a dog or a bird or a fish, something that you take care of and keep it alive. If you watch your grandkids sometimes or if you're still working, all of these things that we give our time and attention to every day, that we are nurturing, that either have really important meaning or purpose to us, or are a cause that we care about out in the community, those things really help with mood, with anxiety, and with keeping our brain going, keeping stimulation going so that you don't feel like, well, what am I going to do today? You have that purpose, that thing to get you out of bed.
Yeah, I really like that as well. I am looking at some of the questions. And yeah, it looks like people are just giving you lots of kudos and thanks to the relaxation exercises. So that's great. But if anyone has any more questions, please post those in the chat. Like I said, this video and today's conference will be recorded and put on our website. So anybody can rewatch this and hopefully maybe practice along with you the breathing again. But if anyone has any questions, please reach out to briangrant.org. You can also email info@briangrant.org and try to relay some of that to Susanna. Any final words that you'd want to share with the audience right now?
Well, just remembering that that kind of recipe for success is to move your body, to exercise, to engage in that mindfulness or relaxation, and to find that purpose in your day. And perfectly, today's conference gives you all of those tools. It gives you the ways to find time to take care of your brain, to take care of your body, and to take care of, your soul, whether it's, you know, getting active in the Parkinson's community, getting active with Brian Grant, getting active at your local school, reading to kindergartners, whatever it is that gives you purpose, that helps keep you going, that helps keep you hopeful and positive. Those are the things we want you to engage in, making sure that you're moving your body, getting out of the house, and connecting to someone every day.
And I guess one final question of my own, if someone is feeling very down and out right now, what would you recommend for that?
Always start with talking to someone about it, whether it's someone close to you, near and dear, a friend or a family member, or even a neighbor. It could be speaking to a religious leader, it can be speaking to your doctor, but don't be afraid to ask for help. I have seen a wonderful shift in people's ability to feel safe sharing that mental health is challenging for them, especially during the pandemic. And I hope that we keep that going, that we can decrease the stigma around speaking up when things are challenging. But please, you really have to start with asking for help, whether it's that you need the medical help. If things are really severe, you can always call 911 or a crisis line if you're suffering with mental health challenges, and get resources in your community. I know in some communities, in our community in Washington State, you can call there's a different number, 211, for just kind of resources and services. So a lot of communities have something like that. You can look into what's available in your community, but hopefully your doctor can get you on the right track too if you're not sure where to start.
Good. Thank you for that. Well, everyone, thank you again, Susanna Eller, for being with us today. You go enjoy the rest of your Saturday, relaxing.
And thank you so much for including me.
Absolutely. So we do have a short break until our next presenter, and Barcha Wichel will start around 10 a.m. So do feel free to leave the screen right now, go take a break, get something to eat, practice your breathing, practice your senses, and we will be back here shortly, right before 10 a.m. to start the next presentation. So go get a break and we'll see you soon. Welcome back, everyone. I hope you had a chance to practice your breaths, get something to drink, maybe get a little bit more coffee, depending on where you are. That has been one awesome thing about our virtual programming is that we have had people join us from around the world. So today, you may be joining us from around the world, and we thank you for that. Thank you for taking your time to be here today with the Brian Grant Foundation. Again, I wanted to say that this will be recorded. So if you want to share it with any of your family or friends or want to rewatch it, it will be on our website within the next 24 hours or so. So without further ado, our next presenter is Barcha Wachtol, and he is also joining us from Seattle, Washington. Good morning.
Morning.
So Barcha is going to walk us through a mindfulness and self-compassion practice this morning, and I am very, very excited for this presentation. It's something that I know myself and many people probably need to do more often, correct?
Yes. Yeah. It can be really helpful to kind of have an inner resource that is helpful and is portable, and we're able to have it with us when we need it. Often as social workers, we have kind of a hard time. We have these sheets that we often hand out to people of like, here are the things that you need to do to take good care of yourself. And a lot of people living with chronic illness, as well as their caregivers, are like, I don't have time to do that. And so what mindfulness and self-compassion is about is kind of having these resources that are portable inside of you. And it's more of a practice and a way of being rather than something that you have to like go to do. So we'll talk about some of the benefits of that and the ways that that can be helpful.
I love that. And Susanna Eller, our previous presenter, she did have us go through a 4, 7, 8 breathing technique, and also a senses, our 5 senses technique. Again, those are things
I love that.
Yeah, you can have for yourself, but it does take practice, just like training for a marathon. You have to practice it.
Absolutely. Yeah, and repetition is our friend in mindfulness, and I'll talk about some of the. Actually, there's a lot of information I have planned, but we'll get into a lot of the conceptual end of things, like how you approach it, and what's important, and how our brain works, and the mechanisms that mindfulness helps us in changing our neurophysiology.
Great. Okay, well, Barcha, I'll let you take it away.
Thank you so much. So as was presented, you can see my name up there. I'm a licensed independent clinical social worker out of Seattle, Washington. I have a private practice that also does a lot of mindfulness and compassion education in the Seattle area. So I run support groups and do conferences like this that I always am very excited about. And so we're just going to talk about discovering mindfulness and self-compassion. And if we can go ahead and move it on to the next slide there. There we go. And so I primarily work with people. A whole part of my practice is working with people with neurological conditions, ALS, Parkinson's, MS, early onset dementia, traumatic brain injury. And then I work at the intersections as well of people living with disability, caregivers, people of color, people who are of various sexual orientations, as well as gender identities. And so I work a lot in those areas, as well as people with trauma. That there's some funny little tidbits about there in me. I don't have to go over all of them, so we can go ahead and move on to the next slide. So these are just disclosures, and again, I'm not going to read these off individually, but these are organizations that I have relationships with or contracts with. And so I just like to be upfront of like where I get money from and what's important around that. So we can go ahead and move on to the next slide. So one of the things that I always like to address is that this often shows up at almost every conference that I go to, and I want you to know that I'm not offended by this, but I also like to clarify, is that you're going to hear me mention things like contemplative neuroscience and the Buddhist psychology. I don't really view Buddhism as a religion. I view it as kind of a school of thought that is being studied by neuroscience and psychologists and social workers to look at what happens to our physiology and our experience when we pay attention to what we're thinking while we're thinking it, what we're feeling, both in like dis-ease in our body or illness, as well as the way that emotions show up in our body. So we're paying attention to that in the moment. We're also paying attention to how we treat ourselves and how we talk to ourselves internally, and in that relationship with ourselves while it's happening, as well as how that translates into how much connection or disconnection we have with others in the world. And so this really isn't about religion. It's about bringing your spirituality, your religion, or if you're an atheist, like just your basic values, is you bring them into the framework of the Buddhist psychology, and you engage in practices like what Susanna went over with you of like paying attention to the breath in a certain way, and moving through the breath and noticing what that feels like. And we'll talk a little bit more about the definition of mindfulness. So we can go ahead and move on to the next slide there. I hope that's clear and met with sensitivity, the kindness and love that I meant it to be. So contemplative neuroscience in the Buddhist psychology is defined as the best brain function, consciousness, and body connection in physical and emotional health of persons with mindfulness traits. So present moment awareness meditators, and that's usually with repetition, that long-term training versus others. And the research shows definitive differences between those two groups in the way that gray matter density and the way that their brain function and work, and the way that we're able to access compassion or kindness towards ourselves or others. All right, we can go ahead and move on to the next slide. So as an overview, I'm not gonna get into a ton of detail because I think that overwhelms people, but we're gonna talk about the research basis of mindfulness. We're gonna define mindfulness. We're gonna talk about the mechanisms of suffering as well as kind of the alleviation. And we're gonna do some key practices. And so just to start out, because it doesn't seem to matter how many times I do these presentations, I always get a little bit nervous. And so one of the things that I like to do is a mindfulness practice that's called an ethic practice. It's called metta, or loving kindness meditation. And so what I want you to do, and I'm going to ring a little meditation bowl. This just brings our mind into attention. You can kind of see it's kind of a fuchsia color with the pad there. So I'm going to ring this, and what we're going to do is we're just going to do a very brief practice. So just allow your eyes to soften or close. So if you're going to have them open, you can just have them kind of open and soft gaze down below. And you don't have to do anything that I tell you to do. I think they recognize that in this moment. But if you close your eyes, that'll allow you to have more of an internal experience. And then just allow your body to have a sense of like uprightness, dignity, and wholeness. Okay, so even if your body can't get into that position, just kind of be thinking about that sense of dignity, uprightness, and wholeness in the body. Okay, allow the shoulders to soften down. Allow your chin to just be gently tucked, not too far up, not too far down. And then we're just going to begin by coming into the breath. And that just means just paying attention to what the breath feels like coming in and going back out. And then what I want you to do is to picture an image of yourself just as you are now, or perhaps another age self, as though you're seated across from yourself and just viewing this being who goes through difficulties and joys and sorrows. And just acknowledging in the mind that this being wishes to be happy and to alleviate suffering as much in their life as they can. Just like all other beings, everyone here in this room at this conference wishes to be happy and to alleviate suffering. And then internally, just begin sending these well wishes to the image of this version of yourself. And you're just going to repeat after me. You be safe. May you be happy. May you be peaceful. May you be free. May you be as healthy as possible. May you live with ease. And then we're just going to include everyone here at the conference. We're just going to repeat these phrases again. Just thinking of all the other beings here at this conference, or other people out in the world who have Parkinson's, or caregivers of people with Parkinson's, family members, loved. Just repeating after me. May we be safe. May we be happy. May we be peaceful. May we be free. May we be as healthy as possible. May we live with ease. And now just expanding your awareness into the whole body breathing, just noticing how the body feels in this moment. And just allowing yourself to feel the way that you're feeling, to be just as you are, with no need to make it any different. And then slowly, gently as you're ready, allowing the eyes to come back into the room. Probably sending some of those well wishes to wherever the sirens are heading in the back. So let's go ahead and move on to the next slide. All right, so what contemplative neuroscience is really interested in looking at are three main areas of research, which is neuroplasticity and epigenetics, which you've probably heard a lot with the COVID vaccination, and kind of the way that they're looking at the way that this is impacting people living with chronic illness, as well as telomeres. So neuroplasticity is just about, it's basically about habit, right? That when we begin to change our behaviors, our experience is shaped by those experiences. So every time we go to do something, so I always tell people, like at the lower end of things, if I'm used to, if my right hand is my dominant hand and I go to open a door with my right hand, there's a particular pathway in my brain that is in the habit of doing that. If I come up to the door and I consciously say, oh, I'm noticing that I use my right hand and I'm going to use my left hand, that begins to more difficultly, begins to form a pathway in our brain that says, oh, we're going to start using, and so greater flexibility within our system. So new neurons are produced in certain regions of the brain in response to optimism and present moment awareness. And so we're actually able to shape the way that our brain begins to react into more of a purposeful responsiveness around any kind of experience that we come up against. So that's kind of the simplistic view of what neuroplasticity. Epigenetics is just that experience, behaviors, lifestyles, and attitudes determine gene expression. You've probably heard about some of the new research around the CRISPR gene that can kind of go in and edit DNA. So when we engage in certain ways around our experience, behavior, lifestyles, attitudes, it's kind of like a dimmer light switch. If we're like not eating very well, we're eating lots of big like fatty foods that are bad for us, and we're very, very sedentary, then that may begin to turn on genes within our system and our family history, right? It's no one's fault, but it begins to turn on those genes for disease expression. And again, that doesn't mean that it's anyone's fault, just we're beginning to discover more of like how our physiology works. And then if we're eating well, staying active, doing yoga, meditating, going for walks, eating fresh fruits and vegetables, then that begins to down-regulate the genetic expression of disease process. So mindfulness is involved in those mechanisms in the research. And then the last thing is just telomeres. These are these little ends of our chromosomes, and they're kind of like little hair kind of things. And what they found is that these are indicators of aging at the cellular level, and they can be predictors of longevity. With particular meditation studies that they've done, they found that these telomeres actually get longer with meditation and repetition around loving kindness meditation or paying attention to the breath as an ongoing practice. And then with high stress and kind of getting into reactive states, those telomeres actually get shorter. So they can be a big predictor on longevity as well as quality of life. That's what that indicator of aging is. All right, so we can move on to the next slide. So I'm just going to go over this. A researcher out of the UK, Paul Gilbert, has found that when they go to present compassion, which mindfulness engages compassion, being able to respond to our suffering in a particular way, that there are certain judgments in our mind that society has kind of told us that we should believe in, is like, oh, if I'm more compassionate, or if I engage in mindfulness and am a peaceful, loving, kind person all the time, that's just self-pity, or it's weak, or it's selfish, or it's self-indulgent, or it's making excuses, or it undermines motivation. And I'm not going to go over all the details. You can read them there. But in the research, if we actually do education, like if I share this with my clients, my students, at people at conferences, that actually lowers our resistance to compassion, to recognize that not only are those falsehoods, that isn't what happens, that on the opposite end of things, that we actually become more capable in maintaining relationships, gaining perspective, becoming stronger within our values, being more caring and supportive, being able to take responsibility for things that we do. So much so that, like, even here in Seattle at the VA, they run support groups for veterans, just around loving kindness meditation, which is what we did at the very beginning. And the resilience that comes out of those groups is just tremendous. I got to hear one of the lead researchers talk about that study as well as the groups themselves, and it's just really powerful. And they've started to use that at the front end in a lot of different corporate organizations as well as military. All right, next slide, please. So there are lots of studies out there about mindfulness specific to Parkinson's, and they usually involve like anywhere from like just 2 sessions all the way up to 8 weeks. But the same kind of outcomes show up over and over again. And we can't say causality because they're still having to do more research. So, but what we notice is that when people with Parkinson's go through a program of mindfulness over time, that there are changes in gray matter density in certain parts of the brain that actually help us with symptoms. So it impacts the amygdala, which is the arousal, emotional response, as well as our autonomic response, and helps us with memory. It's also about our hippocampus. It helps us with short-term, long-term memory and spatial navigation. And in these particular research studies, when they went to go do some of their neurological testing after going through the program, all of their numbers, their qualifiers kind of like increased, improved after going through the meditation programs. You also get voluntary movement impact, as well as communication, lingual gyrus, as well as that visual processing and memory. The sensory hub, so our motor control of how we move a lot more fluidly. Most of the time when I work with clients who have Parkinson's, they share with me after we do a meditation that they feel like they're more in flow. And then there's also that internal, external information integration. So generally speaking, if you look at any study on Parkinson's and mindfulness, these are some of the basics that you're going to see show up in improvements in quality of life and functioning. Not a cure, I want to be really clear, but a level of healing happens that is very helpful. So when we actually go to do meditation, sometimes what might show up is we have these 3 main experiences as human beings within our emotions. And that's that we have pleasant emotion states, neutral emotion states, and unpleasant emotion states. In particular around mindfulness is that sometimes we've kept doors and windows shut for a very long time. And when that happens, mindfulness kind of helps to open us up. And when that happens, sometimes we get in touch with things that have been hidden for a very long time, and then that might cause an emotional response. So like even at conferences, I have had some people have like emotional breakdowns where we call it backdraft, where they're like, oh, I'm out of alignment with my values, or this memory showed up and I'm overwhelmed and I'm tearful and sobbing. In therapy, that's a beautiful thing to happen, because as a therapist, I can help that person to come back to that experience gently over time, over and over again, until that reactivity kind of settles down. But in speaking and teaching, I always want people to kind of practice at a low level, like notice what's happening, allow yourself to kind of monitor how open or closed you are to practices or to the information themselves. So I always like to mention that, as well as to give a good plug for please find a good mental health therapist if you haven't already. It's tremendously invaluable to going through the process of changes in your body and changes to your self-image so that you're not getting caught with surprises as you move through your journey of life. Next slide, please. So what is mindfulness? So mindfulness is the cultivation of awareness. It's paying attention to what's happening while it's happening with acceptance or non-judgment. Now, you'll notice that I didn't say the purpose of mindfulness is to empty your mind. I didn't say that the purpose of mindfulness is to hold still. I didn't say that you're supposed to have like a euphoric experience or see bright lights or have out-of-body experiences. We're actually very grounded in the research base of mindfulness in the Buddhist psychology. They're generally studying what's called Vipassana meditation, which is focused on what's called insight. So it's insight into paying attention to what's happening while it's happening, and then we learn how to relate to it in a certain way. So we use what's called beginner's mind. If you make a mistake, you just go back to the beginning. So when your mind wanders, when you're like, I can't, my mind is racing, you just go back to the next breath. There's no big deal. And that is mindfulness. You're doing it correctly. And then you're just allowing what's showing up. And then you're also just testing it out to see, as a good scientist for your own body and experience, like, is mindfulness for me? And it's okay if it's not. But I always want to share with people like what it can do and what I've seen happen with my clients and students. And then the other aspect of it is the awareness of awareness. So not only like my hand here, I can pay attention to it and be like, oh, my hand, right? So I'm kind of paying attention, but I'm not really interested. Or I can be like, oh, look at my hand, right? I'm fearful. Or I might be like, oh, my hand hurts today. Look at my hand. Right? So the awareness of awareness is about paying attention with an intention. So this is where your spirituality, your values, your religion come in mind. So if you have religion and spirituality or just values that are based around love and kindness and gentleness, we're actually practicing those values in our awareness to how we're paying attention. So we're being much more intentional about how we pay attention. So for instance, if I'm having a bad day and I'm like, oh, I don't feel good today, I'm like, oh, may I be loving to myself, rather than, oh, I'm just going to go watch some TV and I need to get away from my body and my experience, right? So we're learning how to be gentle and kind. So it's about your core values, not mine or anybody else's. It's about paying attention in a particular way. And then you bring in like these examples at the bottom: warmth, peace, kindness, a sense of fierce compassion, kindness or love, or courage, just whatever it is that you need, that's what we're bringing into practice. All right, next slide. So suffering on the other end, what we're dealing with in Parkinson's, or sometimes as being caregivers, is this thing. It feels like a much bigger thing than it is, and certainly there's a spectrum of suffering. So it doesn't mean that everyone has the least amount of suffering or the greatest amount, but the way that neuroscience defines suffering, just in the language, is the wish that things be different than the way that they are, right? So if I have Parkinson's, I might have a wish and really fight that internally, like I wish that this was different than the way that it was, and we kind of end up at war with our own body, which doesn't feel very good. That increases our stress hormones. Or like for me, I have chronic pain down my right-hand side of my body from getting hit by a car in 2012. I might be like, ooh, I hate that pain, and I'm in a body clench all the time because I can't stand that. So a lot of teachers use a basic kind of analogy here of like pain, right? Pain itself times resistance exponentially increases our suffering, right? And then also, if we find a way of escape, like drugs or TV or food or whatever it might be, if we experience some pleasure and then we want to hang on to that, and then we strive to continue to feel happy or to feel in that sense of feeling good, then eventually something comes along in life that is that basic level of suffering, and then we suffer more because we're trying to get to feel good and we're ignoring that we feel bad. So those are the basic mechanisms of suffering. All right, next. So one of the ways that our mind works is a researcher back in 2001 named Reichley decided to look at what happens when we place a human being in a room with nothing to do, and often even when we're engaged in activities. So a part of what happened was he stuck people in the room, and this is a functional MRI, a person laying with their head down at the bottom facing up. So you can see the mid-prefrontal lobe, that little red space up at the top, that's the mid-prefrontal lobe, judgment, decision-making, personality. And then in the back of the brain, those are the memory centers. And then you can't see them, but there are these very faint line striations through the center, kind of midline structures of the brain that connect in this he called the default mode network. And this is where we get caught in mind wandering. And subsequent researchers out of Stanford looked at the way that our brain does this. And what they found that this part of the brain creates a sense of self. It's not really who we are, but it's our idea of who we are. And then it projects this self into the future and into the past. And then it looks for problems, right? So they call it a negativity bias. So we're not so much wired for happiness. What the researchers say is we're not wired for happiness in this part of our brain. We're wired for survival. So this part of the brain evolved so that we would, when we came into a new environment as a hunter-gatherer society, we'd come into a new environment and we would scan the horizon or the bushes or the trees for predators so that we didn't get eaten, right? So it's meant to keep us safe from physical predators. But what actually happens is that anyone can kind of like criticize us or tell us something that we don't want to hear, or just kind of like ignore us. And then our system, our brain, this default mode network actually treats it as though it's a predator after us. And so that doesn't feel very good. All right, so next slide. So, and again, I know this is a lot of information. So part of what's happening here is that we have these overlays of cortical columns, 6 neurons deep, that overlie every part of our senses. So like Susanna went over the 5 senses with you. So every time you pay attention in a particular way, these 6 neurons become active. And what they do is they integrate with our senses. And the minute that we have an experience in the moment, like let's say I smell something, those 3 bottom neurons begin to fire, and they say, here's what you're smelling right now. And then simultaneously, that present moment sensory experience send messages to the memory centers and say, is there anything that ever smelled like this in my whole history? And in particular, was that smell traumatizing, or was it a danger to me in some way? And so that information begins to fire from the top 3 neurons down. They crash in the middle, and that's how we experience the present moment in smelling something, seeing something, whatever. And so if that's connected with trauma, we're going to get caught in reactive, constant, pervasive reactivity. So top down overwhelms bottom up present moment experience. But with mindfulness, what happens is that we begin to strengthen that present moment awareness so that we become less reactive, less kind of at war with the problems that are going in our body. And that's actually has a healing connection with how we relate to our body. All right, next slide. So we have these 3 essential systems within our body that help us with emotion regulation. I call them with my clients. This is based out of compassion focused therapy, Paul Gilbert, who I mentioned out of the UK. So I call them the 3 pools. So you can kind of notice what pool that you're in any given moment, and then kind of what pool do I need to be in. So we have these 3 systems within our body that help us with how we emotionally regulate. So the threat system is specifically designed for physical threat. Things that are predators like coming after us, right? They help us to manage threat, protection, survive, and to seek safety. So that's our sympathetic nervous system. It's sympathetic to our threats or to our stress. So that's how you can remember it. Sympathetic starts with S, and stress starts with S. That's your sympathetic nervous system. That's all the reactivity so that we keep ourselves safe. And then the parasympathetic system is that green circle, the soothing system that helps us to slow down, to soothe, to rest and digest. It helps us create a sense of safeness and kindness and care. It's certain researchers like Nancy Eisenberg calls it the tend and befriend system. And then we get energy out of both of those 2 systems that help feed into the drive system. So like if we need to move or get out of there, like fight or flight, then we can achieve goals, consume things, and accomplish tasks but it's going to be harder to do that if we're in threat system. What mindfulness helps us to do is to move gently when difficulty shows up, that we pay attention to it in a certain way. We engage the soothing system, and then that helps us to slow it down enough so that we can actually function and do the things that we need to do. None of these are bad pools to be in. It's just a matter that the drive system and the threat system get so bloated that we forget that we need to slow down and take good care of ourselves internally. All right. Go ahead and move on to the next slide there. So, yeah, since Susanna already did a mindfulness of breath, I'm just going to do a little bit of information on compassion and self-compassion, just so that we're really clear on what those mean. And then we'll do a meditation, an informal daily living kind of practice that I teach to people when I first meet with them, both in classes and in therapy. So compassion in the neurosciences is defined as three distinct things that make up what compassion and self-compassion is. So the first element is mindfulness. So this is where we engage the heart and the mind. So in our body, essentially, we're using the heart as like a symbol. In our body and in our mind, we become aware like, oh, I'm really struggling right now and I don't feel good in my body. Essentially, this is the function of empathy, both towards others and towards ourselves. Like, oh, I can see this person is suffering. The way that this works and the way that empathy is contagious, actually, that helps us to be connected with other human beings, is if you've ever been out in public and you've seen a person like fall down some stairs or hurt themselves on a bar, in that jolt that you get in your body, that's empathy. That's what we call affective empathy. So what we're doing is we're actually feeling what we're feeling in the moment. So in this case, we like name emotions, and we actually try to open ourselves up to like being really aware of what we're feeling in the body. And then we're also engaging what's called cognitive empathy. It's where it's like, I wonder what it might be like to be in that person's shoes. And I'm thinking about it intentionally. Or like what we did in the loving kindness meditation is we're looking at ourselves in our mind and saying, look at this person, this human being who is precious and who is suffering. What must it be like to really be aware of how I'm suffering, right? But we're kind of paying attention to ourselves as another human being. So that's what mindfulness does in the realm of compassion, but that's only the first part, right? So mindfulness, affective and cognitive empathy, we're becoming aware of suffering. The second part of it is common humanity, where we become aware that just like me, other people suffer in this way. There are other people living with Parkinson's or chronic pain, or other caregivers out in the world who are struggling. And it's not that we take joy that they're experiencing that suffering, but when we recognize out of 8 billion plus people on the earth, that there's likely someone out there who feels the way that I do, who's having the kind of experiences that I am, that makes us feel less alone in the world. So we get to recognize that greater universality of suffering, that suffering is a part of the human condition. And then the third phase is very specific what makes empathy different from compassion, and that is that we engage in this sense of loving kindness, of like responding with warmth, love, kindness, care, right? You can hear those values, that intention coming into our practice to be able to help support us from like what is deeply valuable within us around being kind or gentle or courageous, or perspective taking, or love of learning, or appreciation of beauty. Like I have lots of clients that are like, when I'm feeling horrible in my body and I notice that other people suffer in that way, I always check in and like, I move out into nature because that's healing for me. So they've made their practice this really intentional, lived kind of thing. Or internally, you can just say, oh, right, imagining myself in front of myself and like, may you be safe, may you be happy, may you be peaceful. And it's not, again, that fixes it, but over time with practice, right, that we begin to access that more readily. So rather than the impulse to be like, I hate my body and I can't stand this experience, right, that's the reactivity, the threat pool. And we move into the soothing pool, and that begins to become a habit of like, oh, I feel horrible in my body. May I be loving to myself. May I be kind, right? And we know from the research that people who get into that soothing pool, that green pool, they have greater strength, greater quality of life, and better connection in their relationship. All right, so let's go ahead and move to the next slide. All right, so we're going to do this practice. It's called a self-compassion break, and it's just based on the structure of compassion. This was developed by a researcher, one of my teachers, Kristen Neff, who's out of University of Texas, Austin, as well as Chris Germer, who's the head of the psychology department at Harvard Medical School. Both amazing human beings, and I'll tell you about them at the very end, so you can access that information for free online through like YouTube or on their websites. They have free guided meditations that you can do formally or informally. So what I want you to do is to allow your eyes to soften or close. And then embodying that sense of uprightness, dignity, wholeness. Kind of like being royalty, kings and queens, very upright, regal, dignified. And if you can't do that, that's okay. Just hold that image in the mind. And then we're just going to come into 3 deep cleansing breaths, just at your own pace, in through the nose if possible. And then out through the mouth, nice and slow. Twice as long, like what Susanna, I imagine she was doing with you. This is called parasympathetic breathing. Just at your own pace. Kind of like you have a candle and you're trying to not blow it out, but it's right in front of your mouth. And then at the end of the 3rd breath, just allowing your breath to begin moving into its own natural rhythm. You can just notice this kind of rising and then falling of the breath. And then also you can imagine a sense of kind of like inclining toward the breath, just like you would towards someone very dear to you, like a pet or a child, someone you love very dearly, someone in the past who is gentle and kind. So what I want you to begin doing is to notice a difficulty from the last week that's about like a 3 or a 4 on a 10 scale. So not the most traumatic or most traumatizing thing, but more like in the 3 to 4 to 5 scale. Just something that when you think about it, you notice a little bit of that stress show up in the body. Could be like you don't like the weather, you really resist that, or you got a bill in the mail, doesn't feel good. Something went wrong, you made a mistake. So just notice a little bit of that tension, and if you're not, then just go to something a little bit more difficult, like maybe a family conflict. But not anything too intense. And now what we're going to do is just slowly, gently, internally, what I want you to do is just 3 to 5 times, I just want you to name the main emotion that you're feeling in this moment by just thinking about this thing that happened. You can name the word like stress, just like you're communicating with a child or with a pet, very gently, kindly, or anxiousness, sadness, embarrassment, or just pain. Just repeating that word a few times. And now expanding your awareness, just noticing how you feel in your face, in your throat, in your chest, in your stomach, perhaps up through the shoulders and neck, and just noticing the sensations there, just the best that you can. There's no one right way to do this, but just noticing in those locations what you notice when you think about this difficult situation, just feeling it. And now I'm just going to have you repeat after me. This is a moment of suffering. You can use the word difficulty if suffering seems too strong. Just remember that there are varying degrees of suffering in the world. Comparison mind will show up. That's what the mind does. oh, I have it worse than someone else, or someone else always has it worse than me. And then I'm going to have you repeat after me again in common humanity. Just like me, everyone here at this conference suffers as a part of their experience. I know I'm not alone. Like there's a hidden community out there that you know suffers in some of the ways that you do. And that can make us feel a little less alone. And now internally, just moving into repeating whatever it is that you need, like asking yourself, what is it that my emotions or these sensations need? Perhaps kindness or love. So you can just begin repeating the words like love, compassion, kindness, patience, peace. You can imagine the place that you love most in the world, like a beach or a fireplace, or like a forest glade or an imaginary place like up in the clouds, or someplace within your faith like paradise or heaven. Or you can imagine these things that you need as like a color, or like a bright warm light, or like the presence of a spiritual figure. Just imagine breathing that in, infusing every cell of the body with these things that you need. And now expanding awareness into the whole body breathing, just noticing how the body feels in this moment. Allowing yourself to feel the way that you're feeling with no need to make it any different. And then slowly, gently as you're ready, allowing the eyes to open once again. All right. So let's go ahead and move on to the next slide. And I know we're just finishing. I just want to read this last little quote. So this is from John Kabat-Zinn, who took the Buddhist psychology and the traditions that are connected with the long 3,000-year history of the Buddhist psychology and brought it to the West to begin using in medical centers under what's called mindfulness-based stress reduction, that has had tremendous outcomes for people's quality of life and physical functioning as well. So he says healing is a transformation of view rather than cure. It involves recognizing your intrinsic wholeness and simultaneously your interconnectedness to everything else. And above all, it involves learning to feel at home and at peace within yourself. Thank you so much for letting me nerd out with you. There we go. Yeah, so we can keep that slide up, the practice resources. And I believe Iris is going to be joining me here for a little bit of question and answer. And in the meantime, just these are some places you can go for free, guided, downloadable resources, meditation practices through the Center for MSC, centerformsc.org. You can go to their meditations tab. My website, I have a couple of guided meditations up there. And then you can find Chris Germer or Kristen Neff on YouTube as well. So just any of those are fine. And I give the Brian Grant Foundation permission to send out PDF versions of my presentation if anything seems unclear, so that you're welcome to use the information in the PDF form that I sent you.
All right, I think we're back.
Yeah.
I was in my deep mindfulness. So
Yeah.
I was sitting here practicing the whole time and then realized that I was muted and video off, but I was here.
You're engaging, yeah.
Oh yeah. I think that two words I could describe myself through those practices is light and fluffy is how I feel after.
Yeah, and to clarify what happens a little bit is that where that sensation comes from, and not everyone will have it because some of us have a lot more trauma and challenges going on within our body, but we're actually on those long exhales, we're stimulating a vagus nerve, along with slowing down our heart rate, like what Susanna was doing with the different kinds of breath, is that when you're doing exhalations, that's parasympathetic breathing. And that because you're taking in less oxygen, you're slowing down your heart rate. And you're also releasing neurotransmitters into your system, oxytocin, which is the cuddle, love, or compassion hormone, as well as dopamine, which are natural painkillers that we have within our system. So it actually allows our system to relax a little bit more so that we can heal and be more aware and present with ourselves and with loved ones. So that's the basic kind of neurophysiology of it.
I love it. I'm glad that I had made a note about the YouTube with Kristen Neff, and I didn't write the other gentleman's name down, but
Chris Germer.
Chris Germer. So for sure, we will share your slides, and like I said, this is recorded, so people can go back, and those two practices were quite amazing. I took a whole sheet of notes here.
Welcome. Bring it on. Bring it on.
Yeah. Well, some of it is just, I love the idea of the threat pool and soothing pool, and trying to find that balance that, allowing yourself to jump from one to the other, and to find the kindness and find some grace in that.
Yeah. When we move into the soothing pool, when we're in a state of reactivity, like if we have an experience that feels tremendously unpleasant and we feel like we're in fight, flight, or freeze, like I'm closed in, I need to get away, or I need to fight. If we become aware of that, and then we're like, oh, I'm in the threat pool, right? And then we take those long parasympathetic breaths, that slows down our heart rate, and we begin to shift our relationship to that reactivity. And that begins to train our brain and our body that when reactivity shows up, we gain perspective to be like, is this absolutely necessary in this moment? Or can I move into the soothing pool, right? I get my heart rate down, and then I'm like, once I feel a little bit of that safety, then I begin to like send myself what I need, or to follow the breath. And then that begins to change our reactivity over time. So we're actually swimming in stress hormones way less than we were when we were like on our automatic system, right? When we're in that sympathetic nervous system, we're just swimming in stress hormones, and that begins to turn up that epigenetic expression of disease process. So we get cellular degradation when we're in those stress hormones chronically. So mindfulness helps to pull us out of that default mode network functioning, that worry and problem focus, into more creative parts of our brain. And then that shifts our whole physiology. And then again, it always comes back to practice. The more that we do that, then we undo, like I'm 49 and I started this when I was 28. So that begins to shift my relationship to that. And then I begin to form a new habit that is much more centered, grounded, easygoing, but also like sets firm limits on difficulties that show up or the way that people behave toward me, but I can do it still in a loving way. So, that's what that's doing around those three. And it also, like, I use the example often when I'm teaching is like the threat system, we can get energy from that because we're freaking out. And we can get energy from the soothing system because we've rested. Like, imagine getting up after you've had the best rest you've ever had, right? And then how likely am I going to be able to engage in that drive system to accomplish tasks and get things that I need to do? It's kind of like if you have a threat boss who's like on you and like, you need to do this and you need to do that, and you're wrong, right? People tend to highly prize their internal critic or being hard on themselves. But in reality, it makes us very distracted and we're stressed out and we have a hard time focusing. And then if you have a soothing boss, the soothing pool, who's like, hey, I can tell that you're stressed out. Can I help you? Can I take some things off of your plate to be supportive to you? Which of those two people are going to get everything that they need to get done in the workday to actually get that done? And over again, people who have that soothing pool way of relating internally, they get more done with more accuracy and a greater sense of well-being. Right?
You
So we're
also
just kind
treat
of, yeah.
you also treat yourself more kindly, and if you're
Yeah.
treating others then you're giving yourself more love and compassion.
Yes. Yeah, the teen version of the 8-week training for mindful self-compassion is basically focused around becoming a good friend, like becoming your best friend toward yourself. Like imagine when your loved ones are having a hard time or difficulty, in the way that you communicate with them, the way that you're present with them, we often don't treat ourselves even in the way that we treat people that we love. And so what self-compassion is meant to do is to help us become at least as kind and gentle towards ourselves as we are towards others. Kind of at least get into that in-between space.
I think there's a saying, treat others that you want to be treated. How you want to
Yeah,
be treated.
every world religion has the golden rule, right? The Christian version is do unto others as you would have them do unto you. The Buddhist version is do unto others as they would have you do unto them. So it is that regardless, it's that equal flow of like, may I treat myself in the way that I am kind to others.
Right.
Yeah,
I love that.
a lovely truth.
Well, let's see. I'm going to check the chat real quick. And yeah, again, people are just saying thank you so much for your time. It's been a great, another great morning of activities. I think the one thing I'm really seeing is that it's not a race, it's a marathon. And so you really need to take time with yourself to practice the breathing, practice the self-compassion, and know that it's not going to happen today. It's not going to happen tonight. But if you commit yourself today from this conference or from anything that you may or may not be reading or doing outside of the conference, but just be patient with yourself. Know that it will take some time, and do practice it, commit to it.
Yeah. 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 The original word for mindfulness that we translate from the original Buddhist text is bhavana, and it means cultivation. So it's kind of like an agrarian society. We're planting seeds and we don't get a tree right away, but we're taking good care and nurturing our garden. And then over time, we get good fruit that comes out of that. And that shows up in a lot of traditions as well. And then there's a phrase in teaching that we use that says, work harder at struggling less within your practice. Be extra, extra gentle and kind with yourself.
Oh, I love all of that. Well, thank you, Barcha. I
My
hope everyone else
pleasure.
is smiling.
Yes.
I know I am.
Me too. Yes. I wish
Well,
you all
thank
so
you,
much
and
happiness and health.
for sure. Thank you. And we are on a break again. I will say for our next session, starting at 11 o'clock, yoga for PD with Peter Lynch. Do put on something comfortable, grab a chair. It is meant to be interactive, so you will be doing some yoga with Peter. If you have questions throughout his presentation, put them in the chat, and then I'll try to relay them to him. But yes, get comfortable, grab a chair, take a break, and we'll see you back here just shortly before 11 o'clock. Thank you.
Duopa enteral suspension is a prescription medicine used for treatment of advanced Parkinson's disease. Do not use Duopa if you take or have taken a non-selective monoamine oxidase MAO inhibitor within the last 2 weeks. Duopa can cause serious side effects, including stomach or intestine problems and problems from the procedure. Please watch the end of the video for additional important safety information.
See, I would say when I think of my life story, when it's all said and done, I want people to remember that I was a fighter. Over the course of my career, I did a lot of things for the Air Force, including battle damage repair technician, aircraft electrician, medical service corps officer, and contracting specialist. I finally retired from my civilian job in 2012. Right at the time I got diagnosed with Parkinson's. So it's like, welcome to retirement. You got Parkinson's disease. What I remember, right, Cindy and I went out into the car and just cried for about 5 minutes.
When Dale was initially diagnosed, it actually affected both of us very emotionally. But within just a short period of time, I saw him take something that was frightening and make it positive. He set up this amazing support group.
The way you react when life hits you with things does define you as a human being. There's some wonderful people out there that I met in the support group that it's cut them down in their prime of life, you know, and I just hate to see that. Now I feel I need to be strong for everybody, for their group, to give others hope.
Speak, you've been quiet for so long. Believe
My doctor first started prescribed for me the carbidopa levodopa, and for a long time when I took those pills, it felt like I didn't even have Parkinson's. And as time wore on, then I was taking 36 pills a day. So my day was just ups and downs, you know, and it is completely exhausting. We looked at other options for treatment. I got hooked up with the Duopa, and it's been awesome. Parkinson's has slowed me down in that area, but it hasn't stopped me. I get back to my antiques and my tinkering that I like to do. When we decided to get involved in boxing, Cindy got certified, so now she's my coach. I look forward to the next day as the sun's shining, and I look forward to being with Cindy every day.
He's written a book, and it talks about people with Parkinson's disease.
Quite proud of it. It's a thriller. The overall message of the book is it gives people hope.
Do not use Duopa if you take or have taken a non-selective monoamine oxidase (MAO) inhibitor within the last 2 weeks. Stomach or intestine problems and problems from the procedure you will need to have to receive Duopa may occur. Some of these may require surgery and may lead to death. Tell your healthcare provider about stomach pain, constipation that does not go away, nausea or vomiting, fever, blood in your stool, dark, tarry stool. Duopa can cause other serious side effects, such as falling asleep during normal daily activities without warning, low blood pressure when you stand or sit up quickly, seeing, hearing, or feeling things that are not real, unusual urges, new or worsening depression or thoughts of suicide, new or worsened uncontrolled sudden movements, progressive weakness, numbness, or loss of sensation in your fingers or feet, heart attack or other heart problems, increased blood pressure, a fast or irregular heartbeat or chest pain, changes in certain blood tests, especially certain hormone and kidney function blood tests, worsening of the increased pressure in your eyes, glaucoma. Suddenly stopping or changing the Duopa dose may cause withdrawal symptoms such as fever, confusion, or severe muscle stiffness. The most common side effects of Duopa include complications of tubing placement procedure, swelling of legs and feet, nausea, high blood pressure, hypertension, depression, and mouth and throat pain.
Welcome back, everyone. I hope you had a chance to take a good break. Grab a chair, get comfortable. We are very excited to bring to you Peter Lynch, Yoga for PD. He is also based in Seattle, Washington. However, with the pandemic, he's been able to put all of his yoga online. So yogaforpd.org is his website. Hi, Peter.
.com. Hello.
Oh, .com.
Hi. Yeah. yogaforpd.com. No worries.
So Peter's the
Yeah.
owner and instructor of Yoga for PD. He's been doing it for about 10 years now. And he will start us through Yoga for PD, give a little presentation and a practice for us, and then we'll reconnect with Peter at the end. So if you have any questions, please put them in the chat, and I will help facilitate that. So take it away, Peter.
Great. Thank you. Thank you. I'll go until about 11:40 or so, I think, and then we'll talk or something after that. Yeah. So just so everyone knows, thank you for having me today. It's really great to be able to see the efforts of the previous two guests talking about all the mental health that we want to work on and how to achieve it. I'm really glad to be invited to do a little presentation here for you all. My approach, I've been practicing yoga for about 20 years, since 2000 or so, and started to teach in 2010 and pretty much immediately got into yoga, teaching yoga to folks with Parkinson's disease. I had a friend who was a mentor of mine, a yoga teacher who was teaching them before me, and he had just collaborated with a nurse here in Seattle to build classes up. And then he moved out of town and essentially handed the classes over, and I took them over and kind of expanded the program, and have been doing it ever since 2010, 2011. And mostly has been in person up until a year and a half ago or so, or a year ago, I guess, really. And then I went online because I needed to serve my students still. And suddenly I'm realizing, oh, this is actually something well, not even suddenly realizing. I kind of knew all along that I'd been wanting to go online and reach people out there virtually, because I know a lot of folks with Parkinson's don't have access to a class like mine, or have access to exercise programs in their towns, or are maybe able to even get out of their house and commute and things like that. So so my classes have kind of blossomed online, and I'm teaching to people in Alaska and New York State and Florida and Arizona and all sorts of places. And I teach one class a day, 5 days a week. Three of them are recorded, so you can even do them on your own timing. And that's basically the structure, the format of my classes. But please, yeah, check it out, yogaforpd.com. But I'm here to also demonstrate a little. And I just want to talk a little bit about what yoga is first. And it really ties into a lot of what Bartra was talking about before, and the neuroplasticity that we get from working our brains in the concert of our mind and our bodies, and working in various directions to try and sort of expand our capacities, but also to challenge ourselves, and with yoga to try and sort of watch it happen as it's happening in a way, to be mindfully moving, to be thinking about what is coming up in your experience as you're doing various things with your body that might feel uncomfortable and may create emotions and thoughts that then feed back into the system, and noticing as best you can how all those things kind of intertwine to create your experience. And what we practice in my classes a lot of times I'm trying to sort of give people an opportunity to witness themselves and to witness others too. When we're in person, especially, it's really a wonderful way for people to feel community, is to come together with other folks who have Parkinson's, and they don't feel awkward or like they have to be something other than or appear in any way other than how they appear. So it's very self-compassionate, about figuring out how to be compassionate and loving towards yourself as you do something that challenges you and may bring up things that are, challenging not only physically but emotionally and mentally too. Yeah. So a lot of the yoga that I've taken in my life has been the most beneficial in that regard, where it feels like I'm growing, not just physically or just to do something to get my body in shape, but why am I getting in shape? What am I doing to get my body in shape? Well, I'm doing this for a reason. I'm doing this with an intention to be able to go out in the world and do the things I want to do in the world. And so with folks with Parkinson's, obviously, exercise, as almost all of you, I'm sure, have heard, that exercise is a key ingredient to keeping your ability to do the things you want to do, and to stave off the progression of the disease. And so with the yoga, we're trying to integrate not just doing hard stuff, but also what is our experience of that, and how might we process some of those sort of subtler layers of our experience? How might we develop a sort of wider capacity to handle ourselves, or to manage what's present, rather than run away from it and have just an aversion from things that are uncomfortable and an attraction to things that are comfortable. Again, as the mindfulness practice is also based in this kind of practice of being with what's there, and trusting that the resources you have, or that you can develop the resources that you may feel you are lacking, or that you can be more present to what is, rather than needing it always to be different. Of course, we're also developing in ourselves where we want to go, and we have desires, and we have aspirations, and ways we'd like to be, and that's also present. So there's that sense of like, can we also be mindful, be aware of those desires, follow them, of course, as well, but also notice how they're driving us, and notice if they're pushing us in places that make us feel bad, or cause us more suffering than what we might otherwise feel. So this all goes into a physical practice here. So I'm actually going to start a little movement, and hopefully all of you out there have a comfortable chair that isn't too cushy. It should be relatively steady and sturdy, so that you can move, and it shouldn't swivel the way mine does. Mine swivels so that I can show you what I'm doing from different angles, and give you a better perspective. Since this is a two-dimensional world that we're looking at, I need to change my view sometimes. I don't have a camera person running around my house, so I become the different angles. But for you, if you can have a comfortable seat underneath you, and one that is preferably where you can reach the ground with your feet, so you're able to have a steady, solid platform under your feet there, and a solid sort of right angles at ankles and knees and pelvis, instead of reaching for the ground, or if your toes are down and your heels aren't. That can change the practice, the sense of steadiness. But also one where you can lean back against it and maybe scoot forward with your pelvis like this too, yeah? If there's arms, that's fine. If it's an office chair, that's fine. Whatever you're sitting in is fine. I try to adapt and make it totally possible to practice with me, whatever situation you're in, as long as it's a chair. So, so we're going to start with a comfortable upright seat, and I'll just mention one other thing in my mind right now about this practice is I want you to, safety is the first goal. So I want you to feel, to practice with the mind on safety and on challenge. And so I have this scale that I've been using as a model for folks for a while, which is, there's level 1, level 2, and level 3. And level 1 is essentially, you're so bored with what we're doing that your mind is wandering off, like it's not keeping your attention. And your mind wanders off and does whatever it needs to do, make lists, plan for the rest of the day, reassess what you just did and criticize it, or aggrandize, whatever it is, your mind goes off into distraction. Level 3 is, your mind is panicking and it runs out of the room. It wants to get out of this situation. It is freaking out and it has this level of anxiety, and the challenge is too great. Yeah. So your mind is sort of like totally unmoored. Yeah. Level 2 is right between. And level 2 is where I think of as where the learning happens, and where creativity might even happen, and where challenge is happening, but it's a challenge that you're interested in, and it's a challenge that keeps you engaged. And those 3 levels are something to keep in mind as we go through the practice. And up to you whether you want to come out of it anytime. It's obviously I can't even be there to force you to do anything, of course. So this is really about practicing with your body. You're essentially like test driving your body. You're test driving how breathing, movement, thinking, feeling is all going together. And you might be able to cultivate a sort of witnessing aspect in the background that's just like, I'm here to see what's happening. And obviously not to witness yourself hurt yourself, but witness the rich array of things that are going on as you practice these movements. Yeah. Now that's all said, and it may make you think that there's going to be some serious heavy duty work to do. That's not necessarily true at all. It's really about keeping your attention as best you can in the moment, and we start with breath, and we'll sort of grow a little bit out from breath into movement and into maybe some challenge, top to bottom, and then calm down towards the end, and then we'll talk a little afterwards if there's questions. Yeah. So try to think about that level 2. We're heading towards level 2, which is interest, curiosity, and learning. This is where the learning happens, because it's pushing your boundaries. It's pushing where the capacities are that you're running up against, limitations and other things. And you're learning what the boundary is and where it's soft, where can it move, where can it change, where is there room to grow, and where are things that you just practice accepting as well, or you practice a compassionate acceptance of the fact that we're limited in a body, that we are embodied here. Yeah. So let's start here. I like to start actually with movement before a traditional yoga class would start with oming. We will om, but I like to get you into your body first. And a lot of times, folks with Parkinson's, their bodies you might have dyskinesia or various tightnesses and engagements and things in your body that you want to work out first before you try to sit comfortably, although you may have been doing so for a long time now. So we're going to get moving here. Go ahead and march your knees towards your chest. And again, if you can, sit away from the back of your chair so you have a little more work happening in your core here as you march. Yeah. And then instead of just marching, we're going to step wide to the side and march high back to center, and step wide to the other side and march high back to center, and continue these big wide steps. Your hands could be on your knees. You can stay relatively oriented forward with your chest. The goal is to feel some work in your hip happening, and to also steadily place your foot down, place it back to center. Get these knees high. This is a practice that might help you out walking too. We're practicing getting high knees to walk, just like in power moves, if any of you have done power moves. The next time you step your left leg out wide to the side here, let's get nice and tall. So our left leg is off to the side. Put your hands on your knees and lengthen up your spine. Take a big inhale, and then exhale. Take a big inhale. This is through your nose, inhaling. Big exhale through your mouth. Let's take one more slower inhale if you can. Nice slow inhale through your nose. And exhale through your mouth. On your next inhale, lift your left leg. Step it back to center. Exhale here. And we're going to inhale, lift the right leg. Step it out wide to the side. Exhale there. And then inhale, lift your heart. Hands on your knees. Exhale through the mouth. Rounding your back, maybe even a little. Inhale, lift your heart, arch your back. Exhale, round your back. One more of those. Inhale, lift your heart. Shoulders back. back bending here. This is called seated cow pose in some circles here. Exhale, round your back. And then as you inhale, sitting up, step your right foot back to the center and wag your knees in and out here. So just get a little release in your hips. Take another breath. Good. And then settle your feet solid on the floor there. So I want to make sure I'm in the frame here. Solid feet on the floor. Both soles of the feet are on the ground, and take your arms out nice and wide to the sides. Pause there, exhale. And then some shoulders will not want to take your arms all the way overhead, but you get to choose. Maybe one shoulder does and the other doesn't. Take an inhale and float your arms up as high as they're willing to go. As you get up there, turn your palms out and push out and down. So your palms face the direction that we're floating our arms. Exhale down. And then turn your palms over, lift those palms up. Inhale. Go as high as they go. Again, this is not to strain or stress your shoulders or back or neck here. Exhale, float down. But do try to get your elbows as straight as possible. So a lot of times elbows are bent, and that's okay. Just do what you can with the straightening elbows. Inhale up. Exhale, float down. So we're almost like clearing the space metaphorically here with our arms. Clearing our minds as well, these nice long inhales. The breath is really the center pillar of our practice here. It's always the place you can go, even if your body's not moving as much as other people's bodies are. You can breathe fully. And big inhale the next time you go up. Stay up with your arms here and roll your wrists wherever your arms are extended, yeah? So my arms are over my head. Some people's arms might be out here. Some people's arms might be down here, and that's fine. But do your wrists, right? So notice if it's forearms here and the wrists aren't getting a lot of action, do try to roll your wrists, your fingers circling around. Splay your fingers out even and work those fingers. Now your arms being up, there's going to be some work in your shoulders as well. Are you at a level 1, 2, or 3? Take a breath. See if the breath can bring you to the level 2, yes? So this breath is always our return to home. That's what I like to think of it. Home base is your breath, and a calming breath brings you back into that parasympathetic. Go back down to the sides with your arms and circle down there. Now let's make our hands into fists. So I'll get a little closer here. Make your hands into fists and rock your wrists there with your hands and fists. So feel those forearm muscles get a little stretch and extension and squeeze, yeah? Good. Now take your hands to your shoulders and swim your elbows in circles. So we'll do big circles with the elbows. Try to touch your elbows in front of you as much as you get them down by your ribs, as much as you fly them possibly behind your shoulders, and then as high as they can go up possibly along your temples, yeah? So these are also shoulder flexibilities. Notice what you notice about thoughts and emotions coming up from the movements that you have that are capable. A lot of you may be doing yoga for the very first time, or these movements for the very first time, and so you might have a lot going on in your mind, yeah? A lot of like prediction or anticipation or concern or whatever it is. Now we're going to keep our elbows nice and parallel to the floor and just sweep them forward and back. Get some shoulder release here. So we did some hips. We did some spinal stuff. We've done some shoulder stuff. So we're getting all the parts online here. Go nice and wide with your elbows. Extend your arms out to the sides. Splay your fingers again. Your fingers are nice and wide away from each other. Yeah. Pump your hands open and close, open and close, open and close. Think of your hands as calling for energy from the center of your body here. Calling for more blood, calling for heat, calling for oxygen. And we do this with our arms out to the sides and rock your ankles up and down. So now you've got your hands pumping and your ankles going. Yeah? All right, good. Now, can you alternate your feet, still do your hands? If your shoulders are getting super tired or need a break, bring your hands down lower, yeah? So now my feet are going in their own alternating action. My hands are going together, and then this is part of the neuroplasticity we work on in my classes, trying to do a coordination that may be challenging. Can you open and close your hands slower, rock your feet faster? Yeah. Focusing on these different parts of the body at the same time. Your brain might be working, and that's the good thing. That's what builds that, connections, the connections that we're trying to build in the brain, the motor neurons firing in different ways, and you're trying to choose them to work, yeah? Go ahead and release your hands back to your knees. and extend at your legs. Now we're going to get the thighs and hamstrings online, yeah? So as you just extend, you keep your knees where they are and fly your shins out forward. You'll feel those thighs work as you extend. And then we'll go with this, the left leg, extend and bend. Extend and bend. Work that hamstring in the left leg. Squeeze the heel underneath your chair and sweep the heel in and out. Drop that foot. Extend and bend your right leg now. Yeah, so the right leg is fully extended as much as it can, fully squeezing underneath, holding that hamstring in engagement there. And the next time you squeeze the heel in, sweep it left and right. Good. Step that foot to the floor and wag your knees in and out again. We'll go back to the spine, a little cat-cow. So put your hands on your knees, lift your heart, arch your back. Inhale. So here we're actually rolling our pelvis forward, trying to get to the front edge of the sitting bones. And then round your back and roll to the back edge of your sitting bones. Your head may dive down, and we're trying to get a big dome in our back body here. Big domed out back. And then inhale, lift your heart, arch your back, squeeze the muscles on your back towards the center of your spine, working that back body. Exhale, round your back, hug your belly in, dive your chin down, rock your pelvis backwards. Let's do 2 more there. Inhale, slow, unfurl to cow pose. Exhale, round. Cat pose. Last time, inhale. Arch your back, lift your heart. Now, get the heart going. I know a lot of people tend to just lift their chin and try and lure their heart up. Maybe even drop your chin down and lift your heart. So we're staying neutral in the neck. Then round your back, dive your chin down your sternum, and stay in this rounded position here to really stretch out the back. Maybe your arms go forward and float like zombie hands out there. Sweep left and right, turn your heart left and right. Notice sensations in your back. We're not trying to hurt ourselves. So if there's anything that feels like a level 3 or, a threat, if that threat comes into mind and your nervous system suddenly takes it in as threat, suddenly you're in a different state, and you want to you don't want to run away from that state, but you do want to recognize it and maybe take some breaths and see if you can slowly sort of return home with your breath, even as you're feeling that. Yeah. So the idea of home, there's still a place of witness and compassion, even when you're in that state. Go ahead and sit up. We're going to do a forward bend now. So lengthen out your spine over your legs. You can either put your elbows on your knees or lay your whole chest down on your legs, but I'd like that spine to be super long. So not tucked down into the hips there, but lengthen it out over your legs. Maybe your elbows go down, maybe your chest goes down. Can you hang out in a forward bend and go to super relaxation here? So we're trying to get super calm, or rather, super let go. Imagine whatever tensions you need to keep yourself in the chair, that's all we're using. Everywhere else we're relaxing. Can you relax your cheeks, your jaw, your eye sockets, your earlobes, your scalp? Can you relax your head hanging from your neck spine? Yeah, so your neck oftentimes is still working as you're trying to rest here. So try turning your chin towards your sternum to get the back of your neck long. So you're not watching me, hopefully. You're down here in a forward bend, chin to sternum. So the back of the neck goes long, the base of the skull sort of lengthens away from the shoulder blades, and then relax from that position. So instead of looking at the floor, you're possibly looking under your chair. Give it one more nice big breath into your back body. So expand your back like a turtle shell, separating all the little plates on the turtle shell, the spaces between the turtle shell. Your big inhale goes between those plates. And exhale. The exhale is calming us down. I often notice my breath affecting my heartbeat. My heartbeat goes slower on my exhale and quickens a little bit on my inhale. So use those exhales to calm down your body. Inhale, sit back up. Make sure you're breathing in a nice tall spine here. You're looking forward. You're not too dizzy. Take your arms out wide and overhead. Inhale again. I hope you exhaled before that so that you have an inhale and an exhale going together, of course. Now we're going to take an exhale, hands down to the heart. Right down the middle line, yeah? We'll do this 3 more times. Turn your palms open to the sky, sitting up tall. Inhale. Exhale, hands down to your heart. Palms go wide, facing up. Inhale. Exhale to your heart. Nice and paced, nice and slow. So working patience into the body. One more time, out to the wide sides with the arms. Inhale, straight up. Exhale to your heart. Now here, with our hands resting at our heart, your elbows might rest by your ribs, your shoulders can relax away from your ears. Do think of getting a nice long spine. Your spine is threading up through the rest of your body, but your rib cage, your shoulder girdle is just hanging on that spine. So you're cultivating the subtler energies that keep our spine erect, but relax the rest of our body. So we're not tense in the neck and shoulders. We try and relax that. Open the collarbones a little bit. Relax your elbows by your ribs instead of pushing your palms against each other or hugging your elbows into your ribs. Just see if you can imagine you're relaxing your arms, leaning against each other at your palms. Yeah. Finally, checking the neck is a really key thing. I'm always working on neck stuff, not only for others, but for myself. There's a tendency to collapse the chin forward. As we get older, especially, we know this look from just getting older, right? So what I like to think of is a high headrest that I'm reaching the base of my skull up towards. Reach that base of your skull up towards a headrest that's up there. That causes your nose to go down to reach the base of the skull up. Now, you don't want to go super far. You don't want to go deep into your chest or your neck with your chin, but maybe overdoing it a little is the first step, and then lifting your eyes and leveling your eyes forward, getting your chin level to the floor, but keeping that sense of energy reaching the base of the skull up so that we can provide the best posture in our body as possible to provide the best access to full breath in our body. And the more access we have to breathing fully, the more health we're bringing into our body, really. If we can breathe bigger, deeper, not like always heavy sighs or always big yawns or anything, but just having space for the breath and the digestive system, and like the posture is what gives us that space. The more we can cultivate good posture, the more we can have good breath, the more the breath can feed our posture, and it gets to be a good feedback loop. Yeah. So that's a practice there of just developing a body awareness, using our senses to feel, can I lengthen the base of the skull up? Can I get the neck long? As I lift my head over my shoulders then balance over my pelvis better. I find a better balance over my hips. The alignment all comes into place if you think about the back of the neck, and think about the low back as almost a mirror image of the back of the neck. So we're kind of finding these three main curves in the back: low back curve, and then the mid back and upper back curve the other way, and then the neck curve going the other way. Yeah, so those three kind of main curves. Some say the fourth curve is at the back of the head. Either way, now we are resting in a way here, trying to be in an upright resting seat. It's a meditation at the very beginning of my class. Well, this isn't quite the beginning, yeah. Oftentimes it's 15 minutes or so into my class. It's a practice of turning attention inward. So if your hands are resting here and it's super uncomfortable, put your hands on your knees. That's fine too. Notice already how the movements have maybe changed your experience of your body. Notice how it may be challenging to keep your focus or whatever. Notice if your mind feels the state, the quality of mind. Is it focusing? Is it having a hard time? Is it running around looking for other things to focus on? Or do you have an opinion of how I speak or opinion maybe that you're running on? So all of that is totally fine. That's what our minds do. But can you turn your attention back to your breath? Can you go into the breath and just watch it happen? Yeah. And in a way, you can watch the breath happen by physically just noticing, okay, it enters in my nostrils, it goes up through my sinuses, down my throat, into my lungs, fills out my lungs and belly, and then goes back out. Watch that story happen in your body each breath you have. Imagine each one is its own story that has something to tell you, something to learn from, or something unique about it. Maybe it's not like a particular lesson, but it's at least it's a moment in your life that won't ever happen again. And being present to it might be something useful, since we can spend most of our lives not being present to the very moment that we're in, but out there in the future or past. Yeah. So eyes are closed probably at this point. Your hands might be at your heart or down on your lap. And you're tracing or tracking the breath, witnessing the breath as it enters and leaves your body. It can help to have a word for the inhale. So maybe the word is inhale. And then the word for exhale would be exhale, or breathing in, breathing out. Maybe it's inhaling. Since it's an active word, it's a thing that's happening. Can you focus on those simple words, inhaling while you're inhaling, exhaling while you're exhaling, 3 breaths alone. Now, whatever that experience was, whether you could or couldn't, go ahead and let go of any story about that. And then consider something that this is considering something to dedicate your practice to. So we aren't going to practice very long today. So this is kind of in the middle already of the practice. But do consider now, bring to mind, as I talked before, doing this for what? Why are you wanting to keep the health of your body going, or develop capacity a little larger than what you have now, or fight off symptoms coming on, or just, practice being with yourself here? Why exercise? Why do mindful practices? Why? There are things out there that you want to do. Probably connections, maybe things like connection to God, connection to family, connection to people, to pets, to kittens, whatever it is. If you dedicate your practice to that, it can inspire you to work, keep you steady on the path. So that would be our dedication. And then we will Om here. And I always do Oms in my Parkinson's classes, especially to keep the voices, again, to notice first how the quality of your voice, to practice and test drive your voice for the day, but also to try and build and keep what you have and to see what can be done. So these Oms are also about lengthening out the breath, keeping the breath nice and long. Big inhale, big exhale with voice. And as you steady your breath out with the voice, you're keeping a tone. So you're having to keep your voice steady. And so you're having to exhale slow. And that exhale slow is a way of calming down, again, this is the nervous system as your exhales are calming. Yeah. So we'll Om 3 times. The sound is Om. It has 3 parts, ah, o, In fact, today I'm going to invite us to do ah and then o and then separately, and then we'll do 1 Om at the end. Yeah. So try this out. I understand, you may be in various situations where you don't want to sing in your house. Don't worry about the tone, the quality. Try not to get caught up in like whether you're in tune with anyone. The idea here is to practice test driving your voice for a nice long tone. Yeah. So we'll start with ah. Inhale and sound out ah. Now, I have some big lungs, so I can do that for a while. You don't have to worry about how long you go, yeah? Just do the longest one you can. Inhale and oh. Inhale, And then the full Om at the end here, as long as you can go. Inhale and Om. Ah. Just release your hands to your knees, breathe normally, and notice the effect of just those long ohms. Notice if there's a global nervous system response. Notice if you had emotions or thoughts around that took you into stories. And again, witnessing that with compassion. Whatever you did, fine. Whatever your mind and heart are doing with that, part of that's a practice of, the first practice of noticing. Part of that is just natural reaction to doing something you may not be familiar with. Part of that is, or part of what I'm asking you to do beyond that, is to develop a witnessing quality. And maybe you can just let that go and come back to what we're going to do here now. So we're going to go ahead and go into some more movements just to finish up here. I want to do a little bit more vigor just because we haven't done a whole lot of vigor yet. So go ahead and lean against the back of your chair. Hold on to your chair and extend your legs nice and long out there. And then widen your legs out to the sides if you can. So we're reclined with nice wide legs. Yeah. If you're stable on your chair, can you take your arms also back and wide and open up in a big sort of asterisk or X shape, a big spread eagle shape? Take a big inhale and extend in all parts of the body. Point your toes, reach your fingers away from your center of your palms. Big inhale, big exhale. On our next inhale, we're going to dial our left arm down by our hip and our right arm goes alongside our ear and side bend a little. Reach back away from the right big toes with your right hand behind you to the left. Big inhale there. Big exhale. Dial the right arm down by the hip. Left arm goes along the ear. Inhale, reach back and high with the left arm. Stay there, exhale. Stay there, inhale, reach a little longer. Left fingertips away from left toes. And exhale, release that left hand down. Step your hands to the chair. Step your feet back to the floor. March your knees at your chest. And then we're going to go ahead and extend and bicycle left leg. So take your left leg and do some big bicycles. Your right foot solid on the floor, so it should be relatively stable here. If your low back feels like it needs more care, you could do this upright, but ideally you can recline and hug your belly into your back and feel stable. Let's switch legs. Bicycle your right leg. Do a few more bicycles. We're trying to build some heat here in our body. Good. Go ahead and drop that leg. Now squeeze your knees together. Hug your belly in. Round out your back. Now hugging your belly deep. Look down your body. Look at your rib cage. Look at your belly. Try and keep your chin down as you hold your chair strong. You're reclined now, so the pelvis is forward of your heart here. Your heart needs to be behind your pelvis in order to do this practice here. Squeeze your knees and ankles against each other. Explore the idea without yet lifting your legs. Engage your belly. Explore trying to push your knees into an imaginary immovable object like a piano or the underside of a table. Push your knees against that imaginary piano and then relax. And then push your knees against that imaginary piano. Now maybe the piano is light and you can lift it. If you can't lift your legs and it doesn't feel good for your back, then don't do it. It's okay. Drop your legs, relax. Squeeze your knees again. Squeeze your belly in, look down again. One more time, slow lift. If you can go higher, go higher. Wherever you're at, hold this for another little cycle of breath, whatever kind of room you have for breath here in your body. Go ahead and drop your feet back down if they were up. Step your feet nice and wide and sit up nice and tall. Take your hands to your knees, nice and tall spine. Big wide-legged position here. Rock your ankles, tiptoes to heels. Take a long breath. Go back to home base. Big inhale, big exhale. Especially the exhale. Now extend your left leg off to the side. We're going to go to what's called side angle pose. So the left leg will go way out to the left now, yeah? Get nice and tall your spine and lean down onto your right elbow on your knee. Now I want this to be forward of your hip. So don't tuck the elbow into the hip. Go out onto the knee. Take your left arm off to the left now. We're going to do big circles with the left arm. Take the left arm up to the sky. Inhale. Turn and reach over your right knee with your left hand down inside your right leg. And then back behind you with your left arm, behind you, up to the sky, overhead, down to the right toe. One more big circle. Inhale, back and high. Exhale, rotate down. And once you reach that left arm back up to the sky, just get a nice big stretch there. Reach up to the sky, maybe along your ear. Big stretch on the left side, big opening. Now that rotational spine is something we work on a lot of the movements. I haven't done a lot of rotation yet today, but I'm going to try and get that in here in a second. Here, go ahead and sit back up. Step your left leg back into center. Wag your knees in and out. Step your feet back out wide. Put your hands on your knees. Lengthen up your spine. Big inhale here. We're going to forward fold and push our elbows into our knees. Get a little extra forward bend, a deeper forward bend possibly than before because our legs are out of the way. So do a couple more breaths here. Inhale. Exhale. One more inhale. And exhale. Notice what's gripping that may not need to be gripping here. The next inhale, sit up. Stay wide with your legs. Extend your right leg off to the side. Get nice and tall in your spine. We'll lean onto the left elbow on the knee. Again, not up against the hip, but out on the knee. Yeah. Nice long left rib cage out over the left hip. Turn your chest, reach your right arm back to the right first. Yeah. Then dial the circle overhead or a rainbow overhead if you like. And then off to the left and stretch that right side big and long as we rotate the chest down towards the floor. Keep your eyes on your right hand. Circle open to the sky. Inhale. Out over the left. Exhale. Now make sure all of this feels stable, yeah? So your left elbow is stabilizing you on that knee. Inhale, high to the sky. Exhale, out to the left and down. Do one last cycle here. Inhale, up to the sky. Eyes might be following your fingertips the whole time. That's also a practice. In Parkinson's especially. Where are your eyes? How are they helping you? Go ahead and sit back upright. Step your feet back into center. Wag your knees in and out. Very good. Let's lean back one more time and take the left knee up towards our chest here. Sweep it left and right. I just want to release that hip a little bit more since we did some other things with it. Might need this release, yeah? Open the knee, cross the left ankle on the right knee, and open that knee down. So this is a work at the hip here. If you want, sit up. Don't let your left knee feel stressed or strained here. If it is, lean back again. Flex those toes back. Keep the toes pulling to the knee to keep it safe, and then maybe sit up again. Again, all of this, what do you notice? How do you feel test driving your body today? What kind of opinions are you coming up with? Can you notice that? Notice those loops in your mind and develop compassion for all of those things that are coming up into your system. Yeah? So we'll just pause there for a moment. We'll only be there for a moment. Let's go ahead and step that leg down, lean back, grab your right knee, pull it up to your chest, sweep it left and right. Get a little release in that right hip. And then turn and cross the right ankle on the left knee. Encourage the right knee open. You don't have to push it strongly. Don't be aggressive with yourself. And then maybe sit up here. Get nice and tall if you can. Again, flexing the right toes back will help stabilize the right knee a little better. Keep the activation in that right shin bone, right toes, right ankle as you're working to stretch and open up the right hip here. So take 2 long breaths here. See if your exhale itself can go in and soften your right hip. Last one here. Go ahead and uncross that right leg, step it to the floor, wag your knees in and out. We'll do one more forward bend, lengthen up your spine, reach it out over your legs, and rest on your legs. Hang out. Hang your head. Do 3 long breaths here. Big inhale into your back. Expand your back. Exhale. One more inhale. Exhale. On your inhale, sit up. And your arms nice and wide overhead. Inhale. Hands down to your heart. Exhale. Let your hands at your heart. Close your eyes. Just take one moment here. Breathing, witnessing, and just allowing whatever your body has done the last 20 minutes, 30 minutes here, whatever your mind has come up with and your heart has come up with, all those integrating to build your experience of your life, to develop a story. Just notice. With love. I'll finish here, yeah. At the end of class, I always say namaste, which translates in my mind as a light in my heart recognizes a light in your heart as the same. Namaste. So thank you for joining my class today. I'm going to get the visual place. Are we good? I can't hear you, Iris.
Of course.
There we go.
That's the slogan of 2021.
Yeah,
I'm
yeah.
muted.
Unmute.
Unmute.
Yeah.
Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Yes. Thank you, Peter.
You're welcome.
That was very,
Thanks
very
for
lovely. I feel
thanks.
very ready to take on the day now.
Good. Thank you. Yeah. Yeah. Uh, well, I wanted to make I wanted to go through. I have a little. I was just making a little list beforehand to make sure I talked about some main things. So, is that okay, or are we?
Oh yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, so I'm just would just like to finish with saying that, you know, I think of yoga sort of as a practice of awareness, and that really, so yoga can be done physically moving. It can also just be done, um, you know, as a meditative practice. What we're trying to become is aware of everything that makes up our embodied life, and practice expanding it wherever we can. And the breath will be your central pillar to always sort of bring your attention back into where that capacity can grow, and where you have feelings and thoughts about those capacities and all of that. Your breath can kind of be the metaphor for exhale to let go of things you don't need. Inhale to take in what's nourishing, right? And uh, so basically, let's see. Yeah, essentially, I just think of yoga as like a massage from the inside out. As you're moving, you're developing sort of connections in your body and massaging out various, you know, stuck energies and things from the movements themselves, so that no one has to be there to give you that massage. You can do it yourself, but it does take heat and building up capacity for discomfort and all those, which, as I talked about, sort of level 2, level 3, level 1 would be. Yeah, and I suppose that pretty much covers what I wanted to present today. So, are there any questions?
It was fantastic. All of the instruction and explanation during your practice was amazing. I think that really helped break it down to understand each step.
Thank you. Yeah, good. I hope
We did
that's
actually
true.
have one question about is the goal to do the ohms only in one inhale?
Mm.
So you just take one and then.
Oh, you just do 1 ohm per inhale. So not all 3 in one inhale. You do one. It's just the longest. It's like, basically, I think of it as a heavy sigh with voice. So it's of course, not a but just a nice, long, steady, and just trying to hold the steadiness and the same tone and quality of the voice all the way through, and then do that 3 times, and then essentially you've taken 3 nice, long, steady breaths, and that calms your system down just on its own, without it having to be some, you know, religious thing, which it has qualities too, of course, too, but it's a physical practice too.
Natural medicine.
Yeah, that's right. That's right.
I found that the like different sounds I could do longer breaths,
Mm.
which I
Yeah,
didn't realize that.
yeah, yeah. That's a good awareness to come to. Yeah, and you know, so,
Yeah.
obviously you could think like, oh, that's probably because I'm closing off the air and it's only going a certain amount, whereas if your mouth's open, you have more air going out. But
Mm-hmm.
yeah, over the years, I've certainly um, I've felt a ton of different things through my ohms, and discovered sort of like how just that simple practice. I mean, that's why chanting is such a huge part of traditions. Um, you know, in all sorts of religious practices, of just sort of like cycling your voice through your body in a rhythmic, uh, long-winded way can
Mm-hmm.
actually, it just like sort of constitutes you around a certain
Mm-hmm.
experience that you can't get otherwise.
Mm-hmm. I think
Yeah.
today that's the one thing out of all the presentations I felt, is that it's very much internal and it's about you. And so What can you do? Which is obviously the point. So whether it's the 478 practice that Susanna had presented or the practices that Barcha or Peter, I think it's definitely that centering and knowing that you're capable, you can do this, whatever that is for you, but you are strong, you can do this.
Yeah. Trusting that you already have the resources you need to develop where you want to go. That they've gotten you here, and you have, it's in there.
Right. I love that. Well, Peter, thank you again. Really appreciate you closing out our morning mental health conference today. I hope you have a great rest of your day.
Thank you, Iris. Yeah, I hope everyone else does too.
Take care. All right, everyone. We just have one more quick video coming from our executive director, Katrina Call. But first, I did want to thank you again for taking the time to be here today. I really, really hope that you have found something to add to your toolkit, your portfolio, whatever it is that's going to help you and your care partners, your family, your friends. The link will be available on our website, briangrant.org. So feel free to rewatch this. If you missed anything, share it and save it. We really want you to know that we're here as a resource for you, the Brian Grant Foundation. Thank you to our sponsors, Amneal, AbbVie, and Moda Health for making today possible. Do check out our website again for future events. It is looking like most things will be online still in 21 for us. But we do hope to do in-person events maybe towards the end of the year, but of course next year as well. So if you're in the Portland area, we do look forward to seeing you again in person. I think that's it for me. So again, thank you so much for taking time to be with us today. I really appreciate it. And be well.
Hello, everyone. Thank you so much for spending your day with us. As we wrap up the Mental Health for Parkinson's conference, I want to ask everyone to please take a few minutes at the end of this conference to think about how you've been feeling recently, the things you've learned today, and set an intention for how you want to feel this week and a goal for some of the things you can do to feel that way. So for example, you may have been feeling pretty anxious lately. And so you might set an intention to feel less anxious, to feel more mindful. And your goal this week might be to do a mindfulness practice for 5 to 10 minutes every day. Or you may have been feeling pretty stressed out recently, and you really want to set an intention to feel more relaxed. So you might try putting some yoga into your daily routine or doing some relaxation breathing throughout the day. Whatever you decide to do, it really helps if you set a goal for yourself and an intention for why you want to do that goal. So please do take about 10 minutes now to just really think through, how do I feel? How would I like to feel? And what is a goal to help me feel that way? Our hope is that we will all feel better if we take some time to take care of ourselves. And in the meantime, we encourage you to visit briangrant.org to figure out how you can also get involved with us and the other resources we have to feel better with Parkinson's. Thanks again for joining us today. I'm really excited to see everyone in the future.